Please.
Mrs. Ayala,
Present.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Here.
Mrs. Hines,
Here.
Mr. Colomans,
Here.
Mrs. Laba.
Right. We'll stand for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Item C is audience portion, and I do have one request.
Yes.
Kinsley Mayo and Olivia Smith, to come to the front, please. Where do we go? Right there. Where's sit down? You can sit down. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Myself, as well as La Junta High School students this morning, were told about these new scanners at the school that will keep track of students' attendance throughout the day, and every time we exit a classroom, it will be kept track of. Myself, along with many of the other students, feel as though this is taking away our freedoms, as we did nothing to put ourselves in this position. We have leaking ceilings and trash cans under them to catch the water falling from the ceiling. We have multiple cases of bed bugs reported, and after reports of extermination, there are always more found. The school is falling apart, and yet others are more worried about seeing how long it takes students to use the bathroom and return to class. Some may say this will benefit attendance. However, I disagree with this. The same students that continuously ditch class and not show up to school are going to continue to do this. Only 35% of students participate in extracurricular activities. These include sports, bands, and clubs such as FFA and high teens. If there are punishments for taking too long to go to the counselor's office or to use the bathroom, they are most likely to affect the students who are involved in extracurricular activities, causing there to be less involved. And we already have little involvement. The students that don't care about being in class will continue not to care. These scanners may not benefit the students who continue to miss classes and not participate, but it will take away from those who do what they are supposed to every day. The administration has failed to discipline students, and now students are able to get away with more, causing the students who don't act out to be punished. The students feel like this new scanner system is taking away our freedoms. What did we do to lose so much trust that now we have to be timed every time we leave the classroom? Why don't we use this time and energy to better our education? Why don't we use this money to fix up the school and make it a safer and more enjoyable environment?
And just on that note, I think it all comes down to accountability. And I feel like the administration just needs to take more accountability of their students, because right now, I mean, me and Kinsley and I have both seen it firsthand, and it's just really not very well handled over there. I don't see it being handled. Thank you.
Thank you. Any silence?
No.
Item C.
The approval of the agenda. Item D is approval of the agenda. You'll see some added consent agenda items. We have some additional names to list as far as hires, and then apparently an executive session was on the way. Or is it requested here?
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the agenda. Second. I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any questions, comments, or concerns? As staff, are we performing exit interviews?
We are not performing exit interviews at this time. We've certainly talked about it, but at this time we're not.
Because it's just something we have to take it on yet. Okay.
But I think we should. We did at the previous district I was at. It was very helpful.
Well, I think we're trying to grow.
Yeah.
Any feedback, whether positive or negative, is still feedback we need nonetheless. I know I mentioned this on several other occasions, but I would like to see exit interviews on all staff.
All right.
I think that's a good idea.
We got valuable information in the previous school district from it. I mean, people will tell you the truth.
Look, when you're on your way out, you got
Yeah.
nothing.
Don't tell you the truth.
All right, any other further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mr. Colomans.
Aye.
Right, item 2. Consent agenda.
So we have a few items on the consent agenda tonight. The personnel, as we just expanded, is on there. And I think that's it. You have 4 that were previously on there, and then I think we added 4 as well. Under consent. 3, excuse me.
Make a motion to put that in consent agenda. Oh. Second.
Ask a question.
In just 2 seconds. Wait. I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Questions, comments, or concerns, Mr. Coleman?
And maybe the superintendent will address this, in his report. Do we have a plan, for Ms. Nelson's replacement, because she's leaving very quickly?
She is, and so we do have to play. I'll go with that.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding the consent agenda? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mrs. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mr. Colomans.
Aye.
All right, item 3, minutes.
We have 3 sets of minutes, Madam Chairperson, to approve tonight. We have the special minute meetings from February the 19th. We have the minutes from February the 24th, and we have special meeting minutes from, looks like March the 5th. To approve, and my recommendation is that we approve all 3 sets of minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes for all. Second. I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the February 19th, 2025, February 24th, 2025, and March 5th, 2025 meetings. Questions, comments, concerns? Corrections? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mrs. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mr. Colomans.
Aye.
All right, item 4, presentations.
Okay, we have 3 different presentations tonight. We're gonna start with Dan. I'll see if my tech guys can work some magic over there. I hear he's already on the Zoom. So Dan Jorgensen, some of y'all may remember, we sat with him at, there's Dan. Conference, and we talked about him coming and doing some presentations for us and some trainings for the board. And so we did receive the portion of the Easy Grant to pay for Dan to work with us for a year, give or take. So now Dan's going to talk to you about some of these trainings and how we need to answer some questions on how we would spread these trainings out. So with that, Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you. I don't know if you can hear us or not, but we're going to turn it over to you.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you. Now the question is, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I see a nod and a thumbs up, so that's good. All right, well, thank you everybody for giving a little time off your meeting tonight, so I can do just kind of a brief overview of the program that's offered by the Department of Education. It's good to meet all of you. I've met a few of you before. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody in person and really getting to know you. At this point, we can't really do introductions very well, I don't think, virtually. I'm going to jump right into it, but I am looking forward to meeting all of you in person. Can you see the slide deck okay or not? I think I might have to, let me get that up here.
We don't see it right now.
Let's try it.
Hold on, here it comes. There you go. Now we do.
Perfect. Okay. Well, good news is it's a very short slide deck, and really the time tonight I want to spend giving you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have about the program, so we can get things really moving ahead. But The program, as Reese said, is really a part of the EASY grant, and it was something that was applied for by your district for supplemental supports for your board. I always like to start this short presentation just saying congratulations because it says something about a board to be willing to step into this domain, being willing to continue with their development, training, and it's always hard to pick up more work because I know we have a ton as board members. And I say we because I know some of you know Matt Cook, if not all of you. I served on the Board of Education in Aurora with Matt. And something he would always say is once a board member, you're always a board member. You're kind of recovering. So I'm in that limbo right now too. I'm recovering as a board member. Um, but it does take time and effort to continually get better at what we do. This program, I think, will help you continue to do that, and it's really an affirmation of your commitment to your district. A little information about myself is up on the screen. We'll get to know each other more, but really my job at the Department of Education is to provide support and technical assistance to districts at all different levels. I do a lot of work related to data use, state accountability system, and then also the board service, the Easy Board service. I am the service facilitator. So I'm not the only one that does the work, but I would be the main culprit, the person you're most likely to engage with. My background, as I said, I'm a past board member of Aurora Public Schools. I've also served in a lot of other different boards in different capacities as an officer and a member, BOCES and otherwise, charter schools, nonprofits. And I'm certified in policy governance by the International Policy Governance Association. It's a lot of extra stuff. I think the important thing to know about me is I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm really here to help facilitate a program, and anything that comes from this program is purely at your discretion. And that's why I love this role at CD. There's no compliance component to it. It's how can I work with you to help support what you need, help you achieve ends that you need. And I have quite a bit of latitude in how I can do that. So I can help you with a lot of direct work, a lot of development of resources, all sorts of things. So this is my favorite part of my job at CD. I'll put it that way. Here's a little background information about this program. Per House Bill 181355, many people don't know, but the CD is expected to offer local board trainings that support academic outcomes of local education agencies. So this is in statute now. It's really not defined on how we're to go about that. And what we've done is we've got a couple things. I mean, foremost, the first service we put in place was this particular program. We actually started working on it. It was definitely pre-pandemic. I mean, that went into effect, 2018 is when that bill passed. But we were working on it at that time, a little bit before through the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, the program really kicked off. But we have this program that we offer, and then we also offer supplemental training. So if districts aren't identified based on like their accountability status, we'll still provide some of the training on request if we have the available resources, people available, really. This training that you signed up for, your district has qualified for, is a service that was created between with partnership from CASB and CASE to a lesser degree in CDE. So it's not just CDE doing anything. We worked really close for a long period of time, even before that House bill went into place, with the recognition the boards are critical for the success of their students and the outcomes of their districts. So there was a group at the time, it was Ken DeLay at CASB. Some of you know him, Leslie Bogart, probably a few of you do. And Randy Black at the time, Matt Cook, Alyssa Pearson on our side, Lisa Medler, myself, and others. We convened to really develop this program. So it's a jointly developed program. And what it does is it combines governance practices, just best practices. So that's another thing. Me or whoever the facilitators are down there, we're not there again to sell you a particular governance approach. We're not here to say, oh, you need to be policy governance or you need to be coherent governance. Or what we want to share is really what what I've learned also from CASB are really best practices of highly effective boards and how that might translate into better outcomes for your kids. And that's the first piece of the training. So we like to talk about it being 2 phases. The second piece is just focused on the school turnaround efforts. So what the performance of your district looks like and what your role of the board or an effective board could be in that domain in supporting your superintendent and your staff. If at any point you have any questions, feel free to just tell me to slow down or wave. I see a few of you. But I'm happy to cover anything if it's, again, this is pretty high level. I've got a 1-pager I can share after this meeting too that you can take a look at. But here's really the primary objectives of the program. I think I just hit it. Help improve governance practices, get a better understanding of roles and responsibilities. And that can look in many different ways. It could also be helping your board establish these things in a more formalized fashion to help all your new board members. I know a number of you have been on there a while, so you've got a handle maybe on how you want to approach things. But we also want to think about the future and what your legacy can be in supporting those future board members and making it a smooth transition. So all the work that you've all done together isn't just lost. Unfortunately, that often happens. And many of you have probably had that experience. One new board member is an entirely new board, and it definitely can feel that way. So that's part of what this program is. We want to help board members better understand school improvement efforts and then develop an action plan for improving outcomes. And again, that action plan could also include very concrete steps that we might take together. It could be everything from getting more training on a particular instructional model or approach that your district's engaging in. It could be creating board handbooks, transition plans, lots of possibilities. And we can talk about that, in the future. But that would be sort of the conclusion of the program, is the development of that action plan. A little bit about the structure and time frame on this slide. It's actually pretty quick, so we're not going to ask for weeks or anything like that from you. The first phase, just the governance piece, takes usually, actually, I won't skip ahead too quick, but the total, as you can see on the slide, the total participation time is usually about 15 to 20 hours total throughout the year. And there's many ways in which we can deliver or engage in that time. They can occur during board sessions, work sessions. They can be scheduled at other times, retreats. I've done a lot of, like a Thursday evening, Friday morning, all day, weekend, everything possible, whatever really can accommodate you the best. As long as we get it worked out, it's pretty much open. So about 15 to 20 hours total. And I hit a little bit on this next program content. We cover a lot of different things. There's a self-assessment. We have different case studies you can look at, group activities. The good news is I don't assign homework. It's very minimal if I do. Sometimes I have a thought question for you to think about before you come in for the session, but really that's about it. So it's pretty light. And then this training, as I said, it starts with that governance piece, and then that helps inform the improvement work. Any questions on all that?
Dan, on that last piece, you and I discussed how we would break up that training. And
Yep.
we talked about, with a current board, obviously the whole state has board elections in November. And we're gonna have two particular board members can't run again. So we talked about, do we do some of the training prior to the election with our current board, and then some of the training after the election with what would be our new board? And do we want to touch base as well at CASB conference first week of December? So can we talk about that a little bit, or what do you recommend on that?
You bet. And how about if we could hold that for just a minute, and then we'll throw it in the last, because I think that's a bigger piece that I want to get some input from the full board this evening, because we want to think about how we want to approach this work. I think I only have one or two other slides. Some of you, again, you may not have been as directly involved with the application, but you're set to receive $10,000 for your board's use based on this. Usually, what we're recommending now is you go through that first phase of training, and then we'll work together to establish how you might want to spend that money. And there's a lot of latitude on how that money might be used to support your work. Again, I won't get into it now, but it's not a huge amount of money, but it can definitely be helpful if you do want to develop really specific things, or if you want to go see how other boards do things, or I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. Anything really related to training can be used, and it says up here if you have additional facilitators, curriculum, tools, collaboration time, really anything. And we'll work together to establish a budget prior to the second phase of the program. And then you can think about how you want to use that. I won't say anything else really about that at this point, but it is, again, hopefully that money will just help complement the program a little bit and give you some really tangible stuff from the program. This is my last slide, kind of messy, but first, the facilitation, usually, that first phase, CD provides the facilitator. Oftentimes it's myself, and if CASB staff's available, I don't remember. You have 5 board members or 7?
Yes, we have 5.
Yeah, 5. So you've all met Matt Cook? You did some training down there, I believe, maybe at one point?
That's correct.
Okay. Matt is one that he will tag team sometimes with me to do that training. So there might be some similarities too with some of the stuff he's done in the past. If he's available, he's in ledge session, depends on when we do everything, or others, but usually I'll take over on that first phase. And then the second phase, this is a piece where you can either contract with some of that money, CD staff sometimes available that can do that, and we can worry about all that later. But the upfront piece then, you don't have to worry about the facilitator. You don't have to worry about any money. The only thing we have to really worry about is scheduling, which I know can be challenging. And we'll spend our most time talking about that. But I'll jump ahead to that third bullet. There are a few requirements associated with this. They're pretty minimal. So we ask all the board members to take a survey. I'll send it in the email, the kind of reminder email, which is kind of where you set now. In terms of a board, and we'll share all that information back with you, and then we'll do one at the end of the training, so we can kind of see how things have changed over time. We use that to inform our practice to see if we're doing a good job or not, areas that we might improve. Anything we collect is confidential. Your names won't be associated with it or anything like that. And I think that was I just wanted to mention that one. There's a couple other smaller requirements associated with program evaluation and the receiving the grant. So we expect to chat with the superintendent when it's over to get their impressions, and then usually the board. So kind of a mini focus group, a little bit of input, but nothing too big there. And we can do that virtually, lots of different ways. So that leaves us with 2 things. Before we talk about the schedule, because I think that's really what I'm hoping to kind of leave here with, is some idea on how we want to approach this. I want to just hit that wrap up bullet, which really is for you. It's, do you have any questions about everything I just threw at you in 10 minutes at a rather rapid rate? And anything that I can address for you as a board or individual board members at this point. The only one I see right now is Gregory, so you're on the spot, but no. But if anybody, you'll have to talk, because I think you have an owl or something, so it's not moving, but
I don't feel like we should go to CASB, because CASB is the time that we get to choose what we want to learn and what we want to cater to our thing. And I think that would be very important for new board members to, if they want to do finance, they can go to finance. They want to do this, they can do that. I just think that would be taken away from what they want to learn. I think it should be at a different time.
So when we say CASB, it would be on a time when, you either go up the day before, or it'd be on that Saturday. So it wouldn't be during the main conference.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. Dan, have y'all done a little bit at CASB before?
We have done different sorts of training. It's not uncommon for many boards to have retreats at CASB. They'll get one of those rooms, and then we'll go in and give them an overview or a little bit of training while we're there. We just have to make sure, of course, that we respect open meetings laws. It will still need to be posted. This is a training, so it won't be discussion of district business. It's going to be specific to governance. Now, the election years always make it interesting too. So if we're jumping into scheduling, but if any questions come up, feel free to jump in. But based on where we're at, we could actually engage in the governance training prior to CASB, and then even start work on the second phase. And then once CASB rolls around, then what we do is we really pull in any new board members, and we could spend a little time giving them an overview of the program along with the work that's been done. So it can actually be a time for transition. Again, like I said, that we're talking about 15 hours approximately total, but there's a lot of flexibility. So as you move through it and you're like, no, this is really valuable, which is what I hope you say. And if you want more, we can continue with some of the supports into next year. That's not a problem. And even the monies can carry over from one to at least the second year. So there's, we have a lot of flexibility there, especially on how we do it. I think there's an opportunity though, if we do some of it prior, because if we do some of it prior to CASB, it can actually help with the transition, especially where we've maybe some members that'll be leaving that have a lot of experience that can contribute to some of the action plan and the thought behind the action plan. Or maybe even it's a board transition plan that you'd be interested in developing. It's hard to say. Board handbooks, things like that. Some of those things could be put in place to help make it a more seamless transition to the new board. And then also we could inform them. And sometimes it might help you, the current board members that are still on, when you have new board members come in, sometimes it's helpful to have someone outside of the board itself that can also talk about what best practice looks like. It's interesting how that works sometimes, but sometimes it's just, and then, and that person, if it's me, even might say the exact same things you would, but it's having that additional perspective on it that might help support them in the transition. So that's something that could be thought about. But to get things started, if you're interested in kicking it off sooner, what we would need to do is just set up 2 3-hour sessions. They don't have to be back-to-back days. They could be different weeks. They could be, usually I don't like a huge gap between the two because those 2 sessions kind of roll together. So it would be, maybe set one week again for 3 hours in the evening if that works, and then maybe 2 weeks later or even a week later. And they will be in person, so I'll make the drive down there, which I'm looking forward to. Love to see your district. I haven't been down there. But that's not an issue at all. And the time is not an issue either. Again, as long as my schedule's not already full, if it's morning, evening, whatever works best for you. And if you'd rather just like pull the Band-Aid and do one evening, one morning, or 2 back-to-back evenings, that's a possibility too. So it's kind of up to you.
You mentioned earlier like a Friday evening and a Saturday morning.
A Saturday morning can work. It can work. Yep. Just have to watch the schedules, but. Or Friday evening, Saturday morning. So that's another one if you want to do back to back and just have it done. I mean, the first session is much more on general principles, and then the second one is the application of a lot of those principles. We'll read some scenarios. We'll also be looking at your own, you'll be looking at your own challenges, things like that. So that's why, like, if you have a huge gap, then it might be a little harder to recall, and we'll have more review actually that second session. You put them closer together in time, it probably reduces the amount of time because it's all still there.
Okay.
And how quickly are we looking to have this first one? Are we talking like April, middle of April?
Yeah, I mean, that would work. That would work if the board wants to go ahead and move forward with that first phase in April. And then the second phase, again, a lot of the work gets done in that second phase, but as that first phase wraps up, I'll be there in person. We can decide on how you want to approach it and when and so forth. That second phase, just given how it's organized, it could even be done in a day. So we have like a retreat or something or a Saturday. I mean, that could also be done. But I think the starting point is, maybe the time in April for that first phase.
Well, we have the training already there set up. And
April 15th.
April 15th. So the attorneys are coming in to to do a small training course on April 15th and kind of introduce themselves as well. So attorneys, it's attorney, one of them, so I don't think both people are coming. So we could either do it after that or wait until May. I want to wait till May, we'll kick it off. We can do it in the summer. Y'all want to do it, have an all day or in the summer, 6 straight hours. It's a lot of sitting.
Yeah, I mean, the summer would work fine too, if we want to go a little later, July, August even. And then that would kind of, again, precede that transition, the election. I mean, something like that would definitely work. I know July tends to work pretty well for me. I mean, in terms of availability and schedules, August could be pretty good too. If you want, it might be hard to come up with something right at this very instant. I know a lot of you are gonna have to start looking at calendars and dates. So, I don't know. If you have some specific ideas.
I don't have
Maybe.
anything right now. No, I don't.
Okay.
I think trying to do it sooner rather than later is important because of the turnover. I don't wanna have this training and then only have 1 or 2 more months of the current board.
What if we shot for like the first or second week of May? So April 15th is gonna be the training from the attorneys. We could even go a week after that, if y'all want to do that.
Please be conscious of graduation. It's gonna be a very hectic time for everybody.
So June,
Say June.
I would rather get it over with. Honestly, I'm coming up with my busy season, and I would like to. I'm fine with April. If you don't depend on how the 15th is gonna take, I'm okay with that. And the other days come over to looking at, but the sooner we can execute it and use the knowledge with the current board we have.
better.
Otherwise, I'm gonna get a lot of helpful information that I'll be able to execute for, I don't know, maybe a month and a half, 2 months, and then that's it.
Okay, so.
And with 3 potentially going, that's more than half your board.
Yeah. Okay, so do we want to do one of those fancy digital polls?
I think that's a good way to handle that.
Okay, and then do y'all want to start shooting for April
I'm out for you.
and May? Okay. All right, I will do
Sure.
that.
Let
As
me,
far as the 6 hours go, do y'all want to do like an evening and a morning? Or do y'all want to do a morning, a big lunch, and then an afternoon? I don't know about big lunch, I don't know if that'll put us to sleep or not.
It just depends if we're looking at weekend or something. Yeah, and the day, really gonna make the most. That for me,
The days,
well, yeah, depending on what day it is, if I already have closing or something going on that day. That's gonna go.
Fridays good for y'all or Fridays not good?
I said it depends on the weekend or, yeah, I have some stuff already planned for 8:20. So, I mean, it just depends on where we get during the week.
What's your preference during the week?
I don't have a preference as long as I don't have something, then I should probably should. Probably depend on this.
it sounds a little tough to hear, so I'm not sure where you're falling. Are you still thinking the week of the 14th or?
So basically what you're not able to hear is we don't have any idea.
That's why I always bring this up to start, because I know it can be tough too.
Jill, you want to add something?
The only thing I
just-
would say, is 6 hours can be a lot. I mean, if it can be split, it's typically a little bit better. It's easier to stay engaged and focused on what's going on and stuff. I know that can be hard. But like I said, 2 3 hour sessions, back-to-back evenings, an evening and then a morning. And I know it's hard because of everybody work schedule and stuff. I mean, those are just some possibilities. Back-to-back weeks, we could always do like a April 14th that week one day, April 21st one evening that week. Um, I don't know what works best for you, but there's lots of different ways we could organize it. Or Friday evening, Saturday morning for a few hours. So if the mornings are more challenging, because what beats talking about governance on a Friday evening after work, right?
Greg, do you have any big obligations right now?
I can, I've got a few things on my schedule, but I think like everybody does, so. Stop to sort around it.
So Dan, I'll be sending out a doodle poll to the board with several different options in April and May. And I will let you know as soon as something is settled on.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, and if you could send me, even maybe let me take a peek beforehand. I just need to, most evenings and most days will work. I can make work, but
Okay.
there's a few things, if it's stuck in my calendar, it might create problems. So,
Okay,
We include Danny on the doodle poll, so then if there are
yeah,
days that can't do, if they're.
yeah, Dan, I'll include you in the poll as well.
okay, yeah, just do a poll and
All right.
see what
That's
works out.
awesome. Do y'all have any
Okay.
other questions of Dan at this time? Yep, we're good.
So if anything comes up, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Like I said, I can shoot this slide deck to you. My email address is up there. But I'm happy to chat about anything. If you have any questions or concerns, just let me know, and then we'll get things going. Also, I assume that poll, can I forward that poll? Is it open to anybody with the link for the possible dates that you were going to send out?
It's not created yet.
Okay, well, once it is, if I
Yeah.
can forward it, it'd be great. I'm gonna check with Casby and see if they happen to have someone that would be going down too. If they do, I'll copy them on it.
Okay,
So, okay.
All right. We appreciate it, Dan.
All right. Well, thanks
Thank
to
you.
all of you. Hope you have a good board meeting this evening, and thanks for your time.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Okay. Madam Chairperson, our next presentation tonight is Sarah Lynch. Sarah is here with us. Sarah is with TNTP. And we're working out logistics right now. Yes.
I think we're good.
from TNTP. And for those of you that were at the presentation at the state board, Sarah also sat in the galley with us, and we appreciated her coming down and visiting with us. She's going to give y'all an introduction to TNTP and some of the things we're going to be working on in our district over about the next 16, 18, 20 months or so. So with that, Sarah, I'll turn it over to you and let you get started.
Thank you. Happy Monday, everybody. Thanks for having me. Spent the day here. It's been great being here. My goal tonight is to introduce you to who we are as an organization and talk through what the work will look like. Many of you have already spent time talking to, and just share with you who we are, and what we'd like to be true. My clicker's not working now. Oh, there we go. All right, there we are. Who I am. I'm Sarah. I've been in education 25 years. I started my career as a social worker. I'm a Colorado resident. I live in the foothills in Golden, Colorado. I was a 7th grade English teacher. I was a middle school AP and principal. And I managed elementary and middle schools both in Boston and here in Colorado. Got through COVID. I got through COVID as a chief of schools and a chief of HR. And learned a lot about managing through really difficult times. And I've spent probably 15 out of the 25 years in the turnaround space, both as a teacher and as a school leader. We're going to talk a little bit about who we are, what we do, and then talk through what the work looks like here in Colorado. You all are now part of a community of folks who we support, and we'll certainly bring folks together in community. That's really important to us. Talk a little bit about what we're contracted to do. And then save some time for some questions. But before I start, there are a lot of educators in the room. There are students in the room. It is a tough time of year. You all have just gotten through one of the longest short months of the year, and just appreciate all of the work and effort that goes into making sure students are really ready for what's coming. State assessments really matter a ton. I know teachers are working overtime. We have folks in schools today just singing praises for the folks here in your classrooms working hard every single day. So thank you. Thank you for your services. So who's TNTP? We're trying to solve problems. We're trying to solve problems with the folks that are closest to students. We know that the jobs students are going to be applying for in 2030, most of them don't even exist yet. And so we need to be thinking about school in a way that is preparing students for the jobs of the future. We also know that mobility is declining. So students who are graduating today are less likely than their parents to make a living wage. This is the first time in the history of our country that is true. And so we believe that education is a solution to that problem, and making sure students are getting the education that sets them up for what comes next is really important. We also know the achievement gap is increasing. Post-COVID, we've seen significant gaps in which students are successful, which aren't. There are some things that work, and they work everywhere. And so these are things that we'll be talking about as we think about turning things around here for your kids and for your teachers. We believe all young people, regardless of where they grow up, what they look like, who their parents are, serve multiple pathways to academic, economic, and social mobility, so that they can thrive. Kids deserve choice. Choice is freedom. So I know that's why our teachers are showing up every day. It's why parents send their children to school, and we want to support in that effort. We work all over the country. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just want to give you a sense of where we're operating. We are currently in over 4,000 school districts, big, small, very urban, very rural. We work on Native American reservations. We work in New York City. So we operate across this country. What do we do? I think what I want to highlight is there's no problem that we're afraid to stand shoulder to shoulder with folks who are willing to solve those problems. We also take action. So we believe, I heard Dan say that CDE is not here to sell you on anything. We're not here to sell you on anything. We're here to ask some really hard questions and have conversations and be thought partners. We also have a lot of experience in training, and everyone on my team has been in a school leader seat. We recognize that that's a really hard place to be. So we're excited to work with Jared, Lisa, Claudia, to solve some problems that feel most urgent, to ensure kids are getting what they need every single day in every single classroom. Parents should not have to win the lottery to get a great teacher. And we believe that there are some pretty simple things you can do to ensure every kid's day is a positive experience at school. So one of the things we're gonna undertake is some strategic planning at the school level and at the district level. We know you all are going through a pretty significant transition. I just listened to you discuss it. And in the short term, we want to make sure school leaders across the district are set up for success for next school year. We want to get into classrooms, we want to spend time talking to students and teachers. We started that work in classrooms today. We started talking to teachers today and school leaders today and folks on the ground in classes, really observing. And we want to be ready to go on the first day of school next year. So we're gonna spend some time this summer, setting very clear priorities across the district. Jared, with the school leaders. School leaders will set priorities for their schools based on what's happening in their classrooms and grounded in whatever is most important to the district. And then we're gonna get on the ground and start work. Things are going to bubble. That's what happens when you get into the mess a little bit. And so we actually want to start strategic planning mid to late 2025. So thinking about December, January of next year, so that we really understand the context before we enter into that process. I think what we're most excited to do, we've been really impressed. Everywhere I go, I lead the work for TNCP across the state of Colorado. Everywhere I go, I talk about Reese's state board presentation. And I've actually never seen state board members cry before. You all really have the right ingredients here to create a world-class experience for every student. You have the right leaders in the right seats, and we're really excited to work shoulder to shoulder with you to really narrow the focus for what kids need. I've just been super impressed in every conversation I've had. We don't just make things up. We don't just throw things at the wall and see what sticks. We have a research arm in our organization that's done national research. One that a lot of educators are familiar with is the opportunity myth. What we found in this research work that we did is that most students across this country are not being challenged. They're sitting in classrooms and they're being given work that's below their grade level. They're often sitting in classrooms with teachers who don't believe that they can do grade level work. And they're extremely disengaged. That is the norm across this country. Then we studied schools that actually were reversing achievement gaps for marginalized students. And when we pull that data, these are schools that kids are growing 1.3 years every year. And so we studied what they did. They got 3 things right. They got belonging right. They know kids. They know what their strengths are. They know what their needs are. They get consistency, right? So as a kid travels across their day and across their time in the district, they're having a consistent experience in their classrooms, and they get coherence, right? Which means their day talks to each other. What they're doing in math talks to what they're doing in science, what they're doing in ELA talks to what they're doing in history. And so we take the things that we learned in this research and we help districts strategize how to choose curriculum, how to set up a block schedule, if that's what you all want to do. How to develop teachers so that they're using the same language, particularly for the kids who have the most needs as a social worker. Predictability really matters to make kids feel safe. When kids feel safe, learn. And so that's really how these talk to each other. And so many of the folks in this room have sat through PD with me already and learned a lot about how to do some pretty simple structures, which leads to belonging, consistency, and we'll keep doing that. Where do we work? We're all over the country, but in the West, I want to talk a little bit about what it looks like in Colorado. We've brought families and school districts together to really think about how to best support Spanish-speaking students and bring in the correct multilingual instructional practices and curriculum. In Jeffco, we actually have trained all of their teachers who are specializing in educating multilingual learners, and then those teachers are then supporting their colleagues. And in terms of implementing high quality curriculum, I know this is on your mind here. We've worked with Jeffco, Adams 14, and Cripple Creek Victor to really think about how do you prepare teachers to execute on a curriculum they haven't used before so that they can hit the ground running. In Colorado, you can see we're all over the place. We're focused on three things. We do a lot of district and school turnaround. We do a lot of strategic planning and community engagement. And then we do a lot of school, district, and state level leader professional development.
Who's 27J?
Brighton.
Okay.
Let's talk about the work here. We have an academic snapshot in process. This happened today. We were trying to answer these questions. How consistently in ELA and math classes are students getting assignments that align to state standards? We're going to report back on you based on what we saw today. We want to think about how consistently students are being provided with strong instruction related to the assignments that are in front of them. We're going to report back to you. We wanted to hear how teachers felt supported by the district and their school leaders, particularly around coherence, consistency, and belonging. Can we use that language a lot? And how do they experience their work? You all were talking about exit interviews. We want to get ahead of that. We want to actually hear from educators before they leave to see how we can best support them right now in an attempt to retain them. We know hiring teachers is hard. And so if we can get ahead of what teachers are asking for to really support them in those needs, we want to do that. And then we talk to kids. We want to know what their experience is like in their classrooms. What do they notice about their favorite teachers? What do they want more of? What do they want less of? I was really excited to hear student voice here tonight. The public comment was coming from students matters a lot. It means your kids are engaged. So we're excited to report back to you what we heard from your kids. That's happening. There's a timeline here. I'm going to come back down in May and we're going to debrief the results with district leaders and school leaders. We're going to set some with district leaders, set some district level priorities. I can tell you what I think they're probably going to be. You all are looking at math curriculum and really thinking about how to implement that in your classrooms, thinking about how to support teachers in executing that at a very high level very quickly, and really thinking about using kids' time as well. I spent a lot of time in classrooms across the state, and so much time is wasted for kids. And what we find is in classrooms where kids are really engaged, the moment they show up, they're working on something that's relevant and rigorous. So we're excited to think about that. What are we going to do next school year? I will have team members on the ground. We will do monthly step backs based on the priorities we set this summer. We'll get into every classroom in the school. And we'll determine, are we making progress in the places that we said were most important? We will report that back out to you. We will set new goals monthly to make sure that we keep the momentum going. And we'll also report out to teachers. What we don't want to do is come in and say, we're going to do this, this, and this, and never talk about it again. And so every month, be on the ground, having conversations about what's working and what's not, and we'll make tweaks along the way. We'll support leaders both at the district and the school level to really execute on the visions they set this summer, and support around priorities and initiatives. And talking with Jared, I really do think it's going to be related to math curriculum implementation. I've seen your goals, getting principals and instructional leaders in classes regularly, really supporting instructional practice and improving, making sure kids are engaged every day. Next winter, we'll work on a strategic planning process, and I'll come back and talk to you more about that when we get closer. We would want you all involved in that process. Your voices really matter. You have the bosses, and so we want to make sure whatever we're talking about in terms of strategic plan really is aligned with your vision for the future. How'd I do, Reese?
Really good. Wow.
Reese was worried when he saw the number of slides I brought here with me tonight.
I saw 30 slides or 29. I would exaggerate. Oh my. A lot.
What questions do you all have for me?
I don't know if I have any though. Really thorough. Thank you.
Well, I guess, so once we start next year, will this be a monthly the agenda, team?
Well, what will be a monthly agenda item will be Jared's report. And I think Jared could always do a report as to working with Sarah and how much they came in, what we're doing this month with TNTP. Like tonight, Jared's going to talk to you about some work we've done with UVA recently and the work he's doing with TNTP as well today. So I think that is what you would look forward to seeing, essentially. And then we'll always have reports from Sarah that we'll share with y'all as well, and Jared will share this with you.
And I tend to come back once a year and report out on progress. But if you're feeling anxious or you want to know more, I'm happy to buzz down here.
I didn't have a question. I just had a comment that it would be to in person today and just see the partnership with TNTP and how great it felt to see other individuals getting that snapshot in our building and having that comfortable feeling when we sat down for that quick debrief this afternoon was phenomenal. They identified some of the things that we see as areas of growth. They identified some of the things that we think that we're doing well, and just the presence of having them and how they address situations was nice. It made me feel good that I don't feel like I'm sending people in there making my teachers nervous. They know that they're there to help them, and that was clear within just the first few minutes that I was there today in that meeting. And so I wanted to say thank you. I appreciate that, and that's important to me in having a partnership.
Thank you.
What campuses were y'all on today?
We were at the elementary, so primary and intermediate. Yeah.
Is that it? All right.
Well, that was good.
Thank you, Sarah, so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Madam Chairperson, the next report will be an MTSS update, and Haley Romero is gonna give this to us. Come up to the hot seat.
I brought with me a couple of our co-coordinators on the project so that they can talk about their versions as well.
She is going to tell you. Yes.
Yeah.
That's more.
So I'm Sky Susan. I'm the instructional coach at the primary school. And I work with Haley, and then we brought Jared in as his position was hired. And what we're working on is we're a part of the RIT, a regional team and we're working with BOCES for co-MTSS. So we're here just it's your first introduction of what co-MTSS is and what we're doing.
Just to introduce myself, if you don't know me, I'm Haley Romero. I'm the social worker for the district and truancy officer.
Tell them what MTSS stands for.
Yeah. So MTSS is it stands for multi-tiered systems of support, and it's a framework. It's a preventative based framework for improving learners' outcomes for all students through a layered continuum of support. There's 5 components that are under co-MTSS, and there is a handout. I don't know, Jill, were you able to get that into a doc?
Yeah, I think it's in the board officers.
It's a nice little one page about what co-MTSS is, so you can go and read it, but truly a good picture of it is it's an umbrella. And it's like,
We don't have a one pager.
oh
I will attach it.
my God, I know.
And also, then we use the term co-MTSS, which is just Colorado
Yeah.
MTSS. When we shorten it, you'll just hear us say MTSS a lot. So excuse us if you hear about those terms.
Some of those more education acronyms.
Exactly. It wasn't enough to have 4 letters, they had to add some.
So it's the umbrella where multiple things are underneath. So it's the check of academics and behavior and community and family support. So all those things coming together. And it really is to help us to identify, provide for supports where maybe places and systems that might be failing, or where kids and areas need supports through tiered systems of intervention. So, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 1 is the base for everyone. Tier 2 is the next step. If somebody needs a little bit more support, if we need a lot of support, we do a tier 3. So I don't know if you guys have seen that tier system model visual. And really, and they'll get into some more, but it really is just, it's a place where it houses everything, where we're taking a look as a functioning district through multiple systems and making sure everything's working together, trying to tease out what's working and what's not, and then fixing. And it's really through data collecting, looking for evidence-based practices and those supports, and then, looking for those effective systems to really help run and implement practices. So.
And just before we kind of dive in, I just want to highlight, kind of being the new guy again at the table, one of these first meetings that we were able to attend, they offered it was almost like a leadership PLC, essentially where our principals were going. And as we're talking about these systems of support, one, and I kind of have to brag on her, I don't want to put her on the spot. But Ms. Julie did a tremendous presentation on the RTI process and what that looks like at the primary. And so as we're looking at this umbrella of systems, we have some great systems in place, but I think where we're starting to see some inconsistency is just between buildings and across the district. And so I wanted to make sure as we start to dive in and talk about this, it's things that we're doing, things that we're highlighting that were great in some areas, things that we're struggling in others. But I did want to make sure that I shine light on the primary, and just in that example where the entire section was led by Ms. Millen. She did a phenomenal job of breaking that down, and that was for principals all through the valley to sit and listen to and steal ideas and pull from. And it was a great, first experience of what that looked like and how we're benefiting from this. So.
RTI stands for response to intervention, and that is the process that you go through if a kid is identified that may need additional needs.
Tier 3 or tier.
Yeah, so if they need additional supports, you put them through this process, and it can eventually lead to them receiving an IEP. But before you put them into that category, you put them through these tiers of intervention. And keep.
Yeah, so a little,
That's academic, behavior, and family.
so a little bit more about the framework. There's 4 main areas. So the whole child, looking at academics, behavior, social emotional, all these things that play into what the kid is as a whole. Looking at data, like they talked about a lot of what the supports look like, pulling all those pieces, whether it's academic data, behavioral data, social emotional things, looking at all those pieces to combine to see where supports need to be. Multi-tiers, Sky touched on that, those 3 tiers that all the supports fall into, and then really looking more of like the prevention and intervention. So that tier 1 area, what all the kids are going to receive. So everything is consistent across the board. Whereas the 2 and 3 are a little bit more targeted, but making sure our universal supports are all targeted to everybody.
And again, just looking at those components, one thing that we had talked about, and I'm going to highlight a little bit more when I talk about a central hub. One thing, like I said, we're having those discrepancies between buildings. And what it is an area for growth that, we're such a small community, while large at the same time, but there's avenues for us to communicate better that we've decided that we need to start looking at with this system. And so having like a universal screener. So what is like the step 1 in this process? And should it look the same in all these buildings so that everyone's getting an equitable screening is kind of the first step of that. And then you look at those multi-tiered systems, going again with the data-driven decision-making to where most educators have a good gut on what they're thinking, but we want to have a gut with evidence, just like we tell our kids when they answer a problem, they should have an answer and then be able to cite the evidence that they're using to support their answer. We want to have that same thing with the data that we're collecting with all these systems. And then again, focusing on that whole child so that we are looking at this from an academic side, a behavioral side, a social side, an emotional side, so that we can really work with our community and foster the whole child.
So this is year 3 of the grant with BOCES. BOCES is our regional driver. So there's, I believe it's 6 different districts in the BOCES region that are participating. Everybody has the same general idea of what they're working on, resources and different things, but their focus area is different. So each district has a focus area specifically for their district and what their district needs are.
That's a piece of what working on this writ, they really brought us, working with Natalie, just tools that really help us tease out a problem in practice. What's crazy is we started this work, or I started this work with Haley last year, and then we joined up with UVA, and it's really a lot of the work of what UVA is asking us to do. So it's a system. So it's designed to be used. So when UVA goes away and TNTP goes away, that's hard to say quickly, but when they go away, that it's a sustained system where we have tools to look at problems of practice and then put some action toward those problems of practice as a district. So a top-down model. So and what we're finding, we did start some work, but through the work with UVA, we're really aligning a lot of what we're doing. They've given us even more tools to help us get started on our problems of practice, which is our big rocks that we're starting and we're doing a lot of work around. So right now, like, they're just kind of hand in hand, like moving and working together. They're not. It's not more, it's what we should be doing and working through problems of practice, so. And then adding in TPT, we're just getting more tools into our belt to help us really get connected and move forward.
How often do y'all meet with, the BOCES in like the region, ETS?
Yeah, so we meet monthly, and I was actually gonna talk about that. So one of the main things that we do is the RCA, Regional Capacity Assessment, and then the DCA, which is the District Capacity Assessment. There's, I think, 20 some questions of different things we score ourselves, and we're able to see where our focus needs to be. So we've completed it the last 3 years with this grant, and we've seen growth over those 3 years. We've included for you guys to see some of the growth charts of where we are with that, but we have established our district, or our district implementation team, which we call our DIT. It's the principals, myself, Jared, and Sky. We meet on a monthly basis, and we have agenda items that relate to what our regional implementation team is focusing on, but also seeing where the work with TNTP and UVA, everything can come together, and we're using all of our resources efficiently. And then we've established our building implementation teams, which we call them the BITs. So those are principals, assistant principals, instructional coaches, and then teachers whenever teachers need to be brought in and on that case by case basis. They call them ILTs, instructional leadership teams. So sometimes the BITs and the ILTs are kind of used interchangeably. All these acronyms are so crazy. So it's hard to keep them. Yeah, there's so many acronyms, it's hard to keep them straight, and we need a book with all of them. Yeah,
Sell it to boards.
absolutely.
And that is a piece that we will work on.
Yeah. Trying to keep-
Establishing all of this into writing. So that's a piece that we're looking to get to. So putting it all in writing, making it a formal process, and then a communication plan to come out of that too.
And one of our biggest things we're gonna focus on right now, one of the 5 components is family school community partnerships. So we're actually meeting this Thursday with Jamie Madigan. She's from Family School Community Partnership. And she's going to help us do a deep dive into an activity, what she calls, I always mess it up, keep, start, and stop. So it's mostly a focus on all of our engagements with our families and students and the community to see what's working, what's not working, where we can add more supports, resources, things like that, the funding and different stuff. So at the very beginning of the school year, we, with our DIP, we worked on a rubric for Family School Community Partnership. And out of that, we realized that the evaluation piece of all of our engagements was missing. And so one of our big focus is trying to look at evaluating all of those engagements that we're doing. Whether it's PIE, PTO, our ice cream social at the beginning of the year, the fall festival, what kinds of things can we put in place to better support and understand what our community needs in our school and our families need.
And just kind of sum it up is what our next steps are for this. And as I said before, kind of identifying that need for a district central hub. As we start to tighten up our systems, we want to make sure that we're sharing it and it's common between all the buildings, it's common between teachers. Honestly, to alleviate some of that, when a teacher has a struggling student, what do I do rather than it happen to be a conversation or uncertain of a process? There should be a system in place that they can go, whether it be a Google file, whatever it may be, there should be a system in place so they can see that and they can follow it, not just know it because they've been there before, but be able to do it. So if we have a new teacher step in, they have access to those resources so that we can kind of streamline it is our goal for that. So as we're working in all these processes, we're doing all these systems to increase our community engagement, to increase all these things. I'm trying to streamline those processes so that teachers know exactly where to go. And then in the same hand, how we can make it transparent to all of our parents and our community members so that whenever they get a call from a parent and it's going, hey, we might looking at this RTI process, we might bump this up to a different reading group, for example. They have an idea or they have an opportunity where a teacher can go, look, this is exactly what I'm talking about, just to give them kind of that information that they don't see that we get to see every day. And it's like a second language to us. We got to work better at being transparent with everyone else. And I think that part of that central hub is having those resources for our staff, but then having ways that we can communicate it to our community as well. And so that's going to be our biggest step is, again, streamlining, getting it at a centrally located place, and then how we're communicating it to our stakeholders is what we're looking at. And that is CLMTSS.
All right. Any questions for our three presenters here?
That was a lot fast.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, well, thank you.
There's a really great one pager.
Make sure you get that.
And
I gotta,
there is a really,
that
if you
could
go
have
to
been my
CD,
error. I don't want to leave
Yeah,
you
there
on
you
the spot.
go.
That could have been my error. So.
I was
but
clicking and
there's
I'm
a
like,
whole,
well,
even, yeah, the whole section on this in CDE around OMTS, there is a lot of information there, but it is. That's where you can really go. It's really about making sure we're getting on track, you know. Also, when we set up good systems that are working and we're evaluating those systems to make sure they work. And then so when people leave, I'm not saying I'm leaving, but if people happen to go and leave, that those systems can continue. And it's not reworking over and over and over again.
You want systems for success and not just systems based off of one person.
Thank you.
all your hard work.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our presentation.
Well, all right.
That's a lot.
That was a lot of information in a very minimal time window. No, just know that.
All three. It's
Good.
All right.
Item 5.
Superintendent report. Okay, so, I want to start by addressing, what Mr. Coleman's asked me about. Do we have a plan, for Ms. Nelson's departure? And we do. So what, Ms. Nelson will be leaving on the 31st of this month. Well, we will be meeting, I believe it's on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. With a group called Abacus. And that's one of the two firms that has been working with us this year. And they can do any and all things when it comes to financial planning and financial work in our district. So we're going to be, Heather, Shay and I will be meeting with them. Shay helps Heather quite a bit. Our biggest concern moving in the next few months is development of the budget. So that's the one that we're really going to ask Abacus. We really are going to need a lot of assistance in the development of the budget. So we will, again, that meeting will happen Wednesday. And so I look forward. In the meantime, Heather's been working with Shay and a few others in our office, and Dawn specifically, and she has a list. They're going over all the things that need to be done, and they're checking off the list. She's showing Shay a few things, like one of the big ones that we have to train Shay to do is every month we go get our money from the state. And so they call that a drawdown, I believe, or
Request for funds.
request for funds. And so we'll be showing Shay how to do the request for funds, things like this. And of course, throughout the rest of this week, Heather and Shay and I will be talking and discussing all the things that need to get accomplished. We also, as y'all know, we've been working with, Dimitri is doing our audit. And we've been working with another individual, Lisa, and Dimitri, as they're preparing for our audit. We hope that audit, we were hoping it would be done by the end of March. I don't know if we have a timeline now. We haven't heard from Dimitri lately well, we just got back today from the week off, so we haven't heard from him today. But I hope we hear from Dimitri by the end of the week as far as the audit goes, so we can finish up. And that audit will be the 23-24 audit that we're finishing up. And then our goal is to accomplish 3 audits, which would have been the 22-23, the 23-24, and then our 24-25 audit will be done in October, November of this year. And that'll put us back on the proper timeline as far as audits being completed. So we will have caught up essentially 3 years in the year. So we're looking forward to that. So that's our current plan as far as moving forward. We have additional staff to help us out. We have Abacus' firm that's going to help us out as well. And then we've got Dimitri that's going to be completing an audit. So that's where we're at with that. A few of the things to highlight in the superintendent report. I told y'all I've been working on corrections on our best grant. I finished up, I think, round 3 of corrections today. We submitted it again. Heather clicks on the link and then we're all good. I did my final submissions today and we're good to go. We'll be back. I think it's mid-May when we actually do a presentation to the best board. And we'll know by the end of that week. It's 3 days in a row, and by the end of the third day, they tell you whether you got the grant or not. So we'll know at that time whether we get the grant for the roof. High school roof is what this is for.
Just not to interrupt, but.
No, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
If for some reason we are unable to secure this best grant to address the roof issue, what is our secondary plan of action?
You can do one or two things. It's funny you asked this, Angela, because Greg and I talked about this the other day. A, you just reapply. That's your secondary action plan. Most best grants take 2 years to get nowadays, because there's just very limited funds. So, you know, on big ones especially, you just keep reapplying. I think the bigger question that everybody needs to ask, that Greg and I talked about at pretty good length, was whether we want to reapply or do we instead want to start going through the process of a new high school. And I would say that's probably a 5-year process. It's a process that I went through in the fast forward in Dolores. But if you have to, our long range plan is out of date. We have to redo our long range plan. The long range plan committee would have to come up with a suggestion that we build a new high school / junior high. That suggestion would come to y'all. Y'all would eventually have to vote to move forward with this and tell the superintendent to move forward. Then you would have to go past, well, we could go ahead and apply what we did in my previous district, is you apply for the best grant even before you pass the bond. A lot of times you don't get those. You get ready, go out for a bond, you try to pass the bond. You get the bond, then you go back and reapply for the best grant, and usually you'll get it on that second time. Then you start developing, you hire architects, you hire a representative, a local rep, you hire builder, and it takes your architect at least 6 months to do construction plans.
We've been through that process before, but you kind of answered what I was asking. Let's take the best grants completely off the table. Let's say that, you know, we're not going to get it, it's too far down the road, it's a 5-year plan. What are we actively going to do to address the trash cans and hallways full of water?
There's nothing you can do without putting on a new roof. Nothing. We can patch, and the patch is leak. We've patched that roof a number of times.
So if we do not secure a best grant, we have no secondary plan of action, no, well, I know we have quite a big reserve account for this very project. Is that a viable issue to replace the roof on our own?
No. I wouldn't recommend that one spend. Why spend your $3 million when we can spend some of the state's $3 million? I would say you just re-up your grant and go at it, and you'll get it the second year. So we'd be a year away and you would just leave trash cans, and essentially that's what you do. You know, and so we just pray for the best. We hope that we get the grant. We, you know, as Katie told me last week when I was working with her on this, and this week, she said, y'all have a very good grant application. But the state, and Greg knows about this, they still don't know how much money they're gonna even put to the best grant system.
Well, and that's what the whole reason for
Yeah.
my line of questioning, you know, what if that entire program goes away?
Yeah. Won't go away.
Having the board, you know, it's reduced substantially, you know, those are all realistic things, but I think we need to be looking at a secondary plan of attack. Because full trash cans full of water in hallways, I've been in the school lately, and that is not a long-term solution, and I understand that there are things that we can and can't do, but I don't think that's a viable solution, at least long-term.
We could pay for it out of our own pocket. I just really recommend it. I think if we do not get it in May, I think we're a year away from securing the best grant. Even if we get it in May, to be honest with you, like we have to turn in a timeline as well, and we're gonna do everything. That roof, let's say best case scenario, we get the grant in May. That roof doesn't go on until the summer of 26.
I know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're still gonna have a little bit of that problem and that long wait, another winter of sitting snow in problem areas with, you know, more trash cans essentially in the hallway. But we're stewards of taxpayer money, and I feel a lot better than saying, you know what, we secured the grant, it's coming, in the summer of '26, rather than, well, we didn't get that grant, but we're gonna make a solid run at it next year. I, as a parent, I don't know if I would be completely on board with that explanation. Sitting in this chair, knowing those things take a lot of planning and time and a lot of thought. I know better than that, but I want to develop a plan where we can be a little more clear with our constituents, so they understand how big of a process that is. We know, because we've been through it. But to everybody else, maybe they don't really understand. The kids see trash cans full of water and they're like, why are we tapping in? Shouldn't you be fixing the roof? They now know that it is a very extensive project we've been looking at for a long time. Maybe put that out there so people know we're not ignoring the trash can or the water. This is in addition to.
I don't know what else to say. I've been here 8 months, I got on it as fast as I could. You can't blame me for years past the way this.
You won't have a good answer, and I'm not holding you to one, but I would like to think just full scope, just in case we don't get it. My fingers are really crossed with you. I hope so.
I've worked extremely hard on this grant.
But thank you. There's no right answer. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, just some full circle.
I hear you.
Sorry, I do.
No, it's quite all right, and it was totally relevant to the conversation for sure, so thank you. Another part of my superintendent report was some really good news is we found $267,316 that will be sent to us because of a double payment about 2 or 3 years ago to Eric. And so we saw the double payment. We brought it up, Don made some calls, and they went, oh my, looky there. So sure enough, we'll be getting that money back. So we're very excited about that. They've actually sent us a piece of paper that says, here's what we found, and there's a reason that's an exact amount, and it's on its way.
We find out in September.
Yes, it was the parent payment made. Here was the problem. It wasn't that we hadn't paid it, we had paid it, but they wouldn't post it.
They would release it.
Yeah, they wouldn't release it because we had 2 errors from some workers, and which is crazy to me that they're gonna hold up a whole payment system because of 2 workers, but they did, as has been explained to me.
2 workers, like our workers, their workers?
Our workers.
Okay.
So if anything's wrong or they question anything, they hold up the whole posting of the payment. So apparently we had sent the money in, Heather tells me, and it was just a matter of them clearing up these issues. I believe it's been cleared up.
I think it has.
Yeah,
So it hasn't been updated.
that's correct. And she said it hadn't been updated. so
Sorry.
November. But we had made those payments in the parent, it just had.
Yeah, they were made, they just weren't put toward our account yet.
So yes, that has been corrected. One other thing I want to touch upon, you heard one in the presentation with TNTP and Sarah, she talked about data analysis and looking at data, and then also Sky and Haley were talking about it as well, about the data analysis. And y'all see in one of my bullets there that we have finished purchasing a new data analysis system called Aubrey. And we've been working on, Dee and I have been working on the main page of Aubrey, which is the data analysis system, as I just mentioned. And we'll be bringing all of our principals through training on how to use that system. And it'll be used for the MTSS process, as well as we look at the academics, even it takes into account attendance, it takes into account disciplinary records, and we pull all of this into one system called Aubrey, and we're looking forward, and that helps us to see real data, real time, being able to address our problems both academically and elsewhere. So we're looking forward to that training that will be occurring really, really soon. And I think that's all that I wanted to highlight tonight in my superintendent report. Unless you have questions for me, I am about to turn it over, and Jared's going to give a second report here on what he's been doing as the CAO.
Jared.
Oh, sir.
You answered a lot of my questions. I guess a follow-up on the budget, what's our timeline? Because
Yeah.
we're on, we've got to get the budget approved.
Yes. The budget is approved. Let me start from the back, from the end and work forward. Yeah, start from the end date and work back. We typically are going to approve the budget the last week of June, and the budget goes into effect July 1. Heather, catch me if I say something wrong. But we will start, really what we have to wait on, to be honest with you, we can get started, but we have to wait on how much money is the state going to send us? And so they will not finish that legislative session until May. So really, we work hard between May and June to finish that budget. The first thing you do in the budgeting process is you take 80% of our budget is personnel. And so we look at personnel first, and then we plug in the additional expenditures as well. But I would say, we're going to go hard and heavy from May through June and be ready to present a budget to y'all that last week of June. Heather, anything else you want to add to that?
The biggest thing is waiting to see
Yeah.
the funds.
State.
Yeah.
So that leads kind of into my second question. When will you know how many new teachers we need to hire?
That's a good question. We will start knowing pretty quick, like next month, y'all will approve the teacher contracts, tonight's administrator contracts. So teachers will know that they have contracts, and then at that time, typically when we roll out contracts, some will start telling us we're retiring. They'll start telling us, hey, my spouse is moving to another area. I'm going with my spouse, or I'm leaving and going to moving myself. So we'll start hearing all of that in April, and those jobs will start being posted. We've already had a little bit of that trickling in, and we've started posting some jobs already, but not much. As a matter of fact, we had one person decide today that that job will be posted soon, that is going to go ahead and retire. So the answer is real soon, but it becomes definite when we do those approvals in April. We really start to see some movement at that time.
I just know in the past, it's been difficult to fill all the spots, and the longer lead time we have, the better chance we have against bills.
So there's a big hire. I think it's on the agenda tonight, which is a science teacher. Was that on tonight, or was that?
That was on the consent agenda.
Yeah, it was on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
So it was big for us to get a science teacher. We had some back and forth, but yeah, well, there's more to that story, but I won't go into. But yes, I got an angry phone call today. I won't go into either. But yes, it's very difficult, Greg, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's not just us.
I know.
It's the whole state.
We want to be better than that.
That's exactly right. That's right. Yes, sir.
My last question is, I don't want you to spend a lot of time thinking about this or planning about this. And you don't really have to answer it right now. Just, it's a huge what if the Department of Education.
Okay, I will answer now. There's a lot of fallacy out there right now about why would we do away with the Department of Education? And which some of the things you hear out of Washington is we want to put more responsibility on the states. Well, the truth of the matter is, in our U.S. Constitution, it clearly states that education is supposed to be the work of each and every state. We already run our education department and by the state. Really, the only thing the feds do for us is our title dollars. Of course, the Department of Education also oversees student loans on the higher ed side, and then some federal grants as well. So there's and then a lot of the stuff that the U.S. Department of Education does, they send it all to the state, and then we'll work with the state. And Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of these grants, we're working with the state. We're not even working with Washington many times. So the money is sent to the state, and then we we apply for those different dollars that we might be going after. If the Department of Education goes away, well, I think it's important. I think we need a Department of Education for our country. We'll still be able to handle most of our functions as a school district just because of our state. And CDE, I want to tell y'all, they're wonderful. Our Colorado Department of Education likes working with our school districts. I mean, you saw Dan tonight. I mean, they're very helpful and they want to be here to help. Versus the other state that I came from, that does all they can to snuff you out and work against you. So believe me, it's an honor to work here in Colorado where the Department of Education actually wants to help you out. So that's a little dig in, if you don't mind me getting that little dig in my previous state. I hope that answers your
Yeah,
question.
I just.
Yeah.
We just spent a lot.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that concludes my portion. Angela, I'll move on to Jared's portion unless there's any other questions.
Okay.
Jared?
All right, I know Dr. Bunko kind of highlighted as I put out these presentations, I'm gonna kind of try to always have a highlight for those partnerships that we have, whether it be SCAP, TNTP, UVA, all those acronyms. I'll kind of make sure that I'm giving a brief update on where we're at with all of those. Essentially, I don't want to go too much more into TNTP. Sarah did a tremendous job, really going in depth with what they do. I'm really hopeful for the partnership. Like I said, the day one starting things off was a great kickoff, and she's got a lot of great insight. And so I can't be more thrilled to be working with them. I know we've got plans already for that May date, where we're going to sit down and look at the data that was collected today. And then we're going to work with our administrators to put together a plan so that when we go to do professional development in June, we have a game plan for what we're focusing on. And we're going to align that with our work with UVA. Transitioning over to UVA, so that University of Virginia in Arlington, they were here on the 26th and 27th of February. When I say they, Ashley, I wish I could remember her last name off the top of my head. Sadler, tremendous. They came in. They do somewhat of a leadership for our administrators, but they really start to look at what data we're collecting towards our big rocks. I know we said that before. Have they kind of broken up any of the bedrock or any of our big rocks to you guys before or anything like that? Essentially, two of our main big rocks is that we're going to ensure that there's effective use and access to high quality instructional materials for kids, and that we're going to establish and build a capacity towards a Lahana vision of instruction. That's essentially the second piece, is a tool that we're all using district wide that we work with CDE to develop as a tool that we can go in, get a snapshot of what our teachers are doing, and is it matching what our biggest goals are, which is, are we teaching to the level of rigor we want? Are we on task for what we're doing, and are they going to meet the goals? And so we're really working towards that with this group to identify, are we making progress towards those goals? If not, how we can kind of change trajectory for that. We work on that with a 90-day plan. So every 90 days, they're reassessing. Again, are we meeting our goals? Are we not? How we can address those. Again, I had started mentioning that central hub. One big thing from this last visit they came out with was how we can share our resources with our staff. So again, even with transparency between what we're doing with UVA to all of our staff members. I know that was one big takeaway we had, is that the staff sees that we're doing a lot of different things, a lot of good things, but sometimes they're seeing admin doing things rather than just even hearing a clear voice from the district office saying, hey, we're doing this in partnership with UVA, or kind of giving some of those explanations. And again, I think it's that lack of having that central hub and that central resource for people to hear from, to hear that strong voice and what we're going and why we're doing it. And so again, it just reestablished that need for a central hub to communicate with our staff and other stakeholders. One huge thing that I really like, so as we started using this tool, it began as just our, a tool with just our administrators using. CDE came down, I believe it's Dr. Sam Snyder. He came down and he really worked with all of our teachers just to kind of build, or all of our administrators, just to build a coherence piece on what the expectations are, what that looks like. For myself as an evaluator, there's always sometimes where I'd go in, I'd see a teacher give this lesson, and I would know that they did that because they did something else, just knowing them and but I was basing things off of assumptions. This has kind of allowed us to move away from assumptions, and again, away from our gut instincts or what we think is happening, to get a clear clearer snapshot of what is realistically happening in those moments so that we can collect data on it and then make informed decisions on that. And again, I know I'm trying to slow down a little bit, but if I keep rolling, don't hesitate to interrupt me. So as we move from UVA onto SCAP, that's a Student Center and Accountability Project. That's where we're essentially working with a ton of the schools in our area, a ton of the schools in the state, and we're working together to identify specific components of efficiency, essentially. On March 10th and 11th, we had SCAP come here. Unfortunately, one thing that in the short time I've been there that I've seen has kind of been a downside to being a part of SCAP is that we're so big compared to a lot of the schools that we see. You know, I met with the superintendent where she had talked about if she sent 2 of her teachers on a visit, 50% of her teaching staff is gone. And so, I mean, when you're working with 7 teachers in a whole district versus, I mean, we have what, 7 educators in the room. It's just, so when we take that on, it becomes a bigger process, I guess is what I should say, is it becomes a bigger process as to where for them to fully give us an evaluation, we were gonna need like 30 evaluators to come in. And they were not able to do that this time. And so that was kind of a bummer with SCAP is rather than looking at all of the components, they looked at just one section of the components and that was learning and climate. And so they kind of came through, they do student focus groups, parent focus groups, they do administrator focus groups, they go observations, they look at all of our online resources. They look at all these things and then they evaluate us, put together data collection and then share that back to us for the district level and the school level. And then again, one huge goal that we had from this last trip was just the learning climate and that it was safe and welcoming. They felt like across the district, the learning climate was there. People wanted to be here. It was a welcoming place when they came in. They spoke a lot about the CKH, where anytime they entered a room, our kids are greeting them. Our kids have jobs. They take pride in that. There's stewardship to that. And so they did a great job with that. One growth that really pulled from that was the learning dispositions and how we can really work with our kids to have a better growth mindset. The way that I see that a lot is you have where kids might be engaged, but it's more of a passive, like they're doing it, they're compliant, they're going through, but it's not necessarily active. And that's one huge threshold difference between scoring really high and scoring mid is that you might have kids that are able to do, yes, okay, this is on the board, this is the objective and do it, versus having kids that are wanting to lead that. And that's our goal. And so that was one blow as we pulled from that we want to work and get our kids to kind of establish that different mindset. And then, again, as soon as we get, our goal is as we work with SCAP, we're hoping that, and I can't remember the exact month, but we had met with the leaders at SCAP to try to come up with a better solution. Like I said, they only looked at 2 sections, the learning and climate. They didn't give us the 4 other sections that are a part of SCAP, so we didn't have the reviewers. So we're working with them to try to reestablish a date that they can come back and bring enough presenters that we get a snapshot of the entire district with all the sections. It's just we're struggling because they don't have the manpower to do it.
Probably November. Yeah, so that for full evaluation of the scan. And then, yeah, day-to-day CAO stuff. One of the biggest things that I can say right now is the instructional coaching position is huge. The amount of work that Sky and Carolina have done with me just in the last few weeks of looking at how we can best support our teachers, how we can best plan as we look at this curriculum that's coming, how we can best plan to support them and get them the professional development they need. We've been having a ton of meetings on that weekly, how we can look at that, how we can look at our state standards, how we can look at sharing those with teachers, just really in-depth what we're doing on a weekly basis. I can't stress enough meeting with those 2 and getting to have that, and then hopefully get to have that position at the high school will be a tremendous help. And then that is all I have. All right, any questions?
Wondering through, well, one of our previous meetings, you touched on SCAP and you kind of thought maybe we should participate anymore.
We think about it, and Jared and I have had a number of conversations. We believe that SCAP is a wonderful tool. And for me to be able to actually sit through and the process that happened in March was eye-opening for me in a lot of ways. But as you've seen tonight, we have a lot of other irons in the fire. So I almost, and Jared and I talk about this a lot. is this one that we could say, hey, not that we want to give up. We want to put it on hold for a year or two while we focus on TNTP, finish up UVA. We've only got one more year of UVA. We've only probably have one more year of MTSS. So we've got some things finishing up, but we've got some long range questions to answer. You know, one of the things that Dan said tonight is the strategic planning. I think it's something that the board discusses as well, because what I prefer to do is have our principals focus on this objective of raising our academic performance. We have to. And then there's other objectives, and I've talked to Jen and Ken. There's things we want to do at the secondary schools that we're not as focused at the elementary schools on. Obviously, that would be career and technology education, career pathways, certifications and such, working with Otero College. But we've got a lot of irons in the fire. So to get back to your question to say, are we going to postpone possibly SCAP? I think it's a discussion we need to have.
And
that's a long answer.
if I can throw my 2 cents in there, again, in the short, I know it's just been a short time I've been here, but in that time, I can see there's some benefit of our teachers getting to go, like I took a couple of teachers to Burlington, for instance, and we spent a couple of days looking at those and being kind of that analyst of seeing what they're doing well. It does prepare those people when they go on those trips. You learn more about what other people are doing. You're learning about where other people are failing, so you can take that back. But I definitely would agree that if we were able to have all of our evaluators and we were able to get, honestly, the tough conversations that we need to have from those outsiders saying, hey, you need to grow here, or you really do this well, how can you use that momentum? Because we're not getting that side of it is where I really struggle with it. If we were getting all that data back and all those numbers back that we could make actionable and not just a gut decision, but getting that data from, I'd feel 100% in. But I really feel like right now we're getting a little bit of the data, but we're sending a lot of resources to other schools and getting some, but not getting the best bang for our buck is the best way. The way
we do pay. We pay to be an discount. How much? I forgot. Heather, do you remember? It's 30, maybe.
Yeah, maybe
And even just the logistics of a trip to trip,
36.
it's gonna cost them.
Oh, 3 or 6. I'm waiting.
Yeah, and then you have like travel that.
But that's the big, yeah. 3 or 6,000 and then a lot of travel. I mean, we sent 5 or 6 groups out this year, maybe more than that. I may be undercutting us a little bit. So.
Have we gotten the full evaluation back, or is it an every year?
Maybe the first year, the second, probably never gotten the full, all four donations.
Yeah,
It's been a while, but.
so
Participated in one where this entire room was full of evaluators.
so
I
there's
feel like at one point we did, but
only every 4 years do you get a 2-day visit, and that's what we were just supposed to have was the 2-day visit. So that's the hard one to fill. Then we will have some 1-day visits annually, and then actually one of the years you have an online visit, or I forget what the exact virtual, thank you, a virtual visit. Not just exactly sure how that goes. So really, this was the tough year. Now they feel bad that they weren't able to fill our, what they were obligated to us, and that's why they want to do the 2-day visit again in November. So
We'll still get it.
So, yeah. Okay, thank you, Jim, for helping out on that. All right. Any other questions?
All right.
Great.
Item 6.
Discussion.
Discussion.
Madam Chairperson, our first discussion tonight, actually, Greg had asked us to put this on the agenda, and I don't want to put it all on it, but I want to give y'all an opportunity to lead this. It's about housing discussion. And do we want to discuss this board looking into, and I think, by the way, in your occupation that you would have.
I know
some-
a little bit.
You know a little bit about this? Yeah, about possibly looking at some teacher housing, renting teacher housing, to teachers as we try to, recruit more teachers to come to our area. That could be one of the obstacles. I know that one of the things going on in our town is there's people that are buying up houses that need to be remodeled. And they're remodeling those houses and preparing them. That might be a way we go to look at this as well. But with that, Greg, I'll give you the floor and see what you want to say about possible housing.
I don't want to drag this out too long. I just kind of wanted to throw it out there and see what people's appetite to think more about it or maybe explore it. And if you don't think it's a good idea, it's just an idea. And I got it from reading a couple of online articles about some districts and other parts of the state, mostly on the western slope. This is a common practice in the ski areas. I mean, we're not the ski areas, obviously. So, and they're doing it, purchasing houses, apartments, and renting to teachers as part of their recruitment package. I know I've heard it almost every meeting I've been in since I joined the board. Recruitment and retention is a huge issue for us, and that's an issue that I'm interested in seeing if we can improve on. And I just thought this might be one extra tool in the toolkit. I'll just kind of leave it at that.
I recently, when I went to the legislative branch, I sat next to a gentleman from Eagle County and he went on for quite a while about it. But a lot of their properties were school properties. So it was like the bus barn had apartments. So it was like different than what you think on certain aspects. So I think that would, and also they did the phone, so I talked to him about that too a lot. So like it would be really good to talk to them, the other districts, because they're definitely willing to tell us about that kind of information. I think gather the information and then have a discussion about it, because it is interesting and how they do it. But they are ski areas, so they have.
And I mean, I don't want to turn the district into real estate.
There's plenty of them already in the real estate business.
So.
Angela, 2 cents.
Sarah, would this be something that maybe we look at more like out of area teachers, like how they perform, or do we get a lot of out of area?
I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't have any answers here.
I think that it would probably be more for brand new teachers, especially if you hire people late. You know, and I don't know, maybe y'all can help me because I need some help on this too. But what is for instance, the apartment rental like in Arlington? Is there a lot of apartments that can be rented by people? Is there occupancy problems in apartments? Rent houses, Angela, is there rent houses? I've seen a few signs, but not just a ton of for rent signs. But now, and Greg, you made a good point. Stacy, you as well. It's a lot of the ski area. Aspen, you can't afford to live in Aspen on Carbondale or Eagle, parts of Eagle, because that's near Vail, by the way. Even Telluride, they have a tremendous amount of housing. The teachers just absolutely can't afford to live in these areas. Question for us is do we have that problem? I think obviously, and Angela, I'll hear what you say, but the housing costs around here are much more affordable than Eagle and Vail and so forth. So, yeah, I just don't know. It's part of that.
So my opinion on the matter is I don't think I could get behind supporting purchasing any houses with taxpayer money when it's supposed to be going to the education of our children. From a professional stance, working in the real estate industry, I can tell you that the housing market crisis that we had here a couple of summers ago, where houses were just flying off the shelves in 2 days, rents were ridiculous because house prices were ridiculous, like everything was moving so fast. I can confidently say we are no longer in that market. That boat is gone. I think, the city of Los Angeles has had 2 total home sales so far the entire year. Wow. I have seen the rental list go from obsolete to extensive. I mean, if people are having issues finding housing, call me. I know lots of people who are looking for tenants. All that to say, we didn't have apartments in La Junta that were really ready to go. The Chestnut Apartments are being renovated. There's a secondary location over on Lincoln Avenue that's being converted into apartments. You have the Opera House Apartments that just changed ownership. You have ownership taking place of the apartments that's upstairs of like Edward Jones, that bank area. So you have a lot of new things changing hands where maybe it was a problem in the past. People are starting to invest some money locally to kind of improve the housing situation. I don't think finding a house is very difficult, but I also am very comfortable in that space. So I have worked with teachers who have come to the area. In fact, I worked with you. You found a place to live rather easily.
Yeah.
And I brought.
Looked at 4 or 5 houses probably.
I brought in several teachers the same way, just brought in the city manager the same way, who was able to get into his home and get started. So, I don't think, we're in the same kind of market where the rents, even the rent prices, they were really ridiculous there for around $1,500 for a 1 or 2 bedroom house. That's crazy to me. That's 2 house payments. But we're coming down more into a regular market. Houses are sitting on the market a lot longer. You have sellers that are willing to negotiate because it's not on fire anymore. So I don't really believe that, that's an area we should go to fix some of our more prominent problems, because that space is expansive. And, you're gonna have to get a property management person, and what does that look like? Do they carry licensure? Who's gonna really, how does all that work? That's a very long conversation. I applaud you for getting creative with it. I think the ski areas use it because they are such a tourist destination. Those prices are high all the time. Bensport's cool, but we don't really have that problem. So I think right now, I would encourage you all to give it some thought, but really kind of just stay positive and look at what's going on around, at least La Junta. We did have that project come in last year with SCCED, and they built brand new homes. They built brand new duplexes. That was something that you don't ever see in La Junta. Anybody building anything, that's weird. But look around. That's changed. The vibe of our community is changing, and I just encourage you all to.
Maybe one of the things we can do, Angel, is work on I know you just rattled off a bunch of them, but maybe if at our office, we can have a list of, here's some apartments, and I can put together a list of, here's some phone numbers of some apartments you can call. Here's some rentals, I don't know if y'all keep a rental list or if anybody else does.
We have a list of people to call us to get on, but we don't really hand that out freely. We don't really work for free. But if you contact the real estate office, Remax downtown, we will provide that to you. And the reason we don't just hand it out is because as things get filled, they call us to take them off or to have more availability. We're constantly monitoring that list so they don't get unwanted phone calls.
Got it.
That's why it's not available online anywhere. You gotta come talk to us. But it is available and it is quite lengthy. That's just my 2 cents on the matter. But if you guys think it's a great idea, I'm open to hearing it.
I think we just mainly wanted to have a conversation about it, just get advice, because I think Bob Brett said we started. Just kind of go up there, see where we're at. Yeah. That's good. All right, next one.
Item B,
All right.
cell phone policy.
So I did want to mention to y'all, and we got an update recently from Case and Casby, that there is a law that's going through where the law is going to have all the school districts have a cell phone policy. They're not going to tell you what the policy needs to be, but they're going to have you develop and have a cell phone policy. But as y'all know, I go to my share of trainings, and we start in the summer, and I've gone to the winter conference, and even the training at Casby, when I was at Casby, the only conference meeting that I went to that was standing room only was school districts talking about cell phone policies. And so this book has come out. I've given each of y'all a copy of this book called The Anxious Generation. If y'all have not seen it, but specifically in chapters 10 and 11 and 12, they start talking about what the government could do to try to help with some of the issues with kids being on the phone a lot, too much screen time, not enough outdoor play time. they start talking about what they think schools should do to help with this. Which is essentially, she mentioned, you talk to the people in Eagle, my friends, my fellow superintendent in Grand Junction has put out a pamphlet that talks about what they did to eliminate cell phones usage in their schools. And I think I'm gonna kind of steal Greg's line. I'm not here to make any decisions tonight. I just wanted to throw this out there. I think all policies and decisions come in good time, and I think that we need to start talking about it. Because the time's gonna come, and I hope it's after May, that we're gonna get this policy, Jill's gonna get this policy about cell phones, and we may have to add some language in there about what we want to do with the management of cell phones in our district. So I think it's a good conversation for us to have and to start to have and be prepared when we get this policy come May or June that we're going to be reviewing. I will tell you that this book references a lot of good ideas as far as what the schools could do, not only with the use of cell phones, but also in just, they call it play, essentially time that students would spend out in recreation and how much time these kids get. And did I get all y'all one of these as well? So, and I think that's something that we ought to have conversations with Julia and Claudia about is, how much recess are we providing to our kids? What does that recess look like? It's funny, in the book, they actually said, don't buy $1 million playscapes, buy hay bales, essentially. So that kids build their own forts and make up their own games. Another part of this book talks about encouraging our kids, and I think our town, and when I talked to the city manager, I wanted this with him about this, is really conducive, which is kids walking to school. And they talk about how that's important, where, kids can and should walk to school, and it brings responsibility for the kids. So there's a lot of good ideas in here that I think that we ought to kick around, but I think the cell phone is definitely one of them. So I'll just leave that open, just again, wanted to just open up a conversation about this.
I'm all for it.
I have, and I'll throw my own kids under the bus. I have a teenager in my house, and I am very big on, I give instructions one time. I think I do a pretty thorough job of being clear with my expectations, and I'll say, I'm like, did you do this? And my poor Gianna, she has the sweetest heart, and that kid cannot stay on task to save her life. And she has an earbud in one ear, and she's got her phone on her hip, and I'm like, did you check the dryer? She's like, nope, I forgot, I'm doing it now. I'm like, okay. I see her 10 minutes later. I'm no longer. Did you check the dryer? She's like, oh, I'm doing it now, I forgot. And, finally what it takes to get that accomplished in my home, I'm like, give me your phone. Because then I'm able to take the earbud out of her ear, the distraction off her hip, the Taylor Swift that's coming from her voice, I can put an end to all of that. And lo and behold, all the laundry gets done. It's quick. So I carried that over to her classroom. She was wearing her earbuds. And I monitor my children's grades because I'm that kind of parent, and I see that her grades do this. And I go to parent-teacher conferences. And I ask her teachers, what's going on? They're like, well, she's really distracted. I'm like, well, how many times have you corrected? They're like, well, we don't, she's a teenager, she's got to be in charge of herself. I'm like, how many times does she have an earbud in her ears? They're like, oh, all the time. We cut that out, and now that, some of the teachers at the junior, senior high school, they already do this. If my daughter goes to math class, she wants to use a calculator, just to turn in her cell phone, just to trade her cell phone for a calculator. Genius. That is genius. Mrs. Burr has a box at the back of her room where you can lock it up and charge it. What teenage kid doesn't want to charge their phone, So these are all things that are already being implemented, and I think it's useful. I gave a presentation at Sherrod School, and they asked each one of their kids, they have like a shoe organizer hanging on the wall so the kids can see their phone. So they're not, oh no, my phone. but you set it at the back of the room and the teacher waits for the phone to go on the thing, and then they come to their desk and they give them a moment to really engage. And then they began instruction, and those kids, we talked about some boring things. We talked about financial advisors and real estate, and I don't know, those poor lovely children were really engaged with active listening and questions, and something that I found quite dry. But they were engaged because they weren't on their phone, they weren't listening to music, they weren't, you know, when you have no other choice but to pay attention and you actually absorb some things. All of that to say that I'm really behind that. I think it's a good way, sorry, ladies, but I do think it's a good way to really kind of redirect what we're trying to accomplish, because we're putting the administration through the ringer to get on par. It's only natural that we raise the bar for our children as well.
Well said. You know, I think if we move forward with some of this, I think there's a number of steps that we would go through. So the first one, maybe the first step that we would go through would be like a workshop with this board here. But now let's bring in our administrators and set them around this table as well, and let them tell you what they see as well, and what they deal with, and all the rules and such that they deal with. I think that's important. I think another step would be to bring some students of different grade levels in here and get what they see as pros and cons to cell phone use in the classroom, because they get distracted by other people using it as well. But I think, and then of course, at some point we'd have to have a parent meeting as well to get input from the parents.
It's very important. That's what people said, is we don't have to see others and we don't tell them, like, some people think that you're gonna take their cell phones completely away. Then we had a board member at the legislative thing freaking out over the 15 minutes about how the times that we live in and things could happen in a minute, and we want our kids to have access to the phone, and like she went off for a while, and all of us were just like, we're all getting scolded. And so it was like, you have to realize that not everybody's gonna think that same way, so we have to educate them about, like, hey, Eagle uses the same thing, put them on back to the door, put your thing there. I mean, if they were emergency, they're right there.
They're right there.
It's not like, you know, they're in.
There's a number of ways to do it, and I've seen the shoe organizer, what do you call it?
Yeah. They all have numbers.
I've seen that. I've also seen, I told y'all the story about when I went to the Garth Brooks concert and we had to put it in the block bag. But also, you know, if all the teachers have this little magnetic lock, and if you have the little magnetic key, you can unlock them pretty fast. You know, like, and I don't think all, I'm sorry.
The kids will figure out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So that-
Diverted to crappy.
Yeah. And then not all grades are the same. We haven't even mentioned the word grades. So like K through 6, for instance, the answer is none, 0. And I think we're already there at K through 6. But then now the question becomes, what at 7 and 8? And then what at 9 and 12? You know, and so like, and all the districts do it different. But like my buddy in Grand Junction, 7 and 8 was no more. But after school, they wanted them to happen. Why is that important? After school, in 7th and 8th grade, you start going to band practice, you start going to sports practice. Sometimes sports get let out early, sometimes practice gets canceled, sometimes it runs long. So that's important to have those phones at that time. That's, by the way, you talk about young kids, that's when I bought my kids' phone in 7th grade. You know, it's mainly because of sports and being able to contact them after school. But I think, I mean, I'll try to summarize this. I think these are all the things that we need to have a discussion about. And I think that policies come in really soon, so I think it's soon that we should maybe have this workshop with our administrators, I think would be the next step. And then bring some kids into the fold as well. And then have the community buy-in meeting as well. And there may be a couple of community buy-in meetings. But a lot of districts have already gone through this, and we won't be the first by no means. And so, and it's a process, and we'll just make sure we go through that process. Sarah, you hadn't said anything yet.
We were in school.
Yeah, the payphone. All right, we'll bring back the payphone.
We were just getting cell phones when we were sophomores in high school when we were like starting to get cell phones.
Yeah.
You know, I joke with my kids all the time, you know, my daughter was 13 when she finally got a phone, and she's like, oh, it's the much younger kids have it now, and that's not a problem, but, you know, when we used to get to the internet, it made a great, crazy noise. You guys don't understand.
Remember that crazy noise.
I think,
You're too young, don't even think.
And then your sister can call her boyfriend on the line.
Yeah, like you're using the internet. It's like,
so I think it's an appropriate time to have the conversation, considering the day of the age we're in. My kids would be a third grade for that.
oh,
The
my.
other third graders.
Oh, my. Wow. Okay. All right, well, then we'll continue to look maybe at a workshop and continue to move this conversation forward, but again, that policy is.
Perfect. Item C.
Jared, I'm gonna let Jared lead on this, the K-6 math curriculum. This has been a long time coming. Jared, it's all yours.
So looking at illustrative math is kind of the curriculum we're looking at. One piece that makes it kind of different than most is it essentially is the basics of illustrative math is just a free online resource. You got to go through publishers. So essentially we determined that Kindle Hunt kind of captured what we needed, or what staff had said, this is what we most wanted. And that was to have hard copies of everything, like teacher manuals, student workbooks, all those types of resources. Again, illustrative math doesn't provide any of that. It goes through a publisher. So what I've been doing is I've been working with Kindle Hunt to look at what those resources look like. One thing is I've continued my research that I found that Kindle Hunt does a great job of giving all those handout resources, but they don't do anything on the backside to enhance the online resources of illustrative math. As well, there's some other, like Imagine Learning is a good example, where their expertise is all in the online systems and not on all the printables. And so what I'm doing right now is I met with Kindle Hunt. I started to kind of secure a package that would include all of the ELL resources we were looking at, special education resources, community resources, but they didn't, not having that online portion made me feel like I didn't want to overstep and miss out on something if we could combine and work with two publishers, or what that needed to look like. So as we started to look at Kindle Hunt and have this out on all the printables, I was really happy with, but I wanted to research these other publishers to see if there was something that we could include, because honestly, the price between what they were starting to look at versus other curriculums I had looked at, it was almost a third to a half of what I had normally seen in my previous position. And so I didn't want to just instantly jump on just the publisher that had the printables. I wanted to see if there was somebody else that offered printables and all the online resources, or if we had it within our budget to be able to look at getting both publishers so that we were able to offer everything to basically our kids and teachers. Again, one thing that I think is going to be huge is if we just do with the printables, getting resources to families, having things that they can work on at home and click and go is going to be a little bit more out of reach. And so I just want to make sure that we exhaust everything before we make a decision. I know when working with Kindle Hunt, they gave me a time frame of about a week turnaround, and once we make a decision and pay them, they can get it within a week. So I'm not too worried about that timeline. Again, I just want to make sure that we are either getting the right publisher or we're getting multiple publishers so that we can get all the resources that I think.
Yeah, you all had, like, I know this process has started many, many months ago.
Yeah.
Claudio was part of the
Yeah,
process.
both primary and intermediate. We had teachers pilot both. And I know they kind of looked at a couple of different resources and try to decide which they liked best. And it was kind of a crossover with that, illustrative and revealed math being two of the top ones. Essentially what wasn't quite in-depth looked at, and correct me if I'm wrong, that report was just those other resources. It was like, we got the Kindle Hunt stuff, we got all the printables, we loved that. We just didn't realize that there was this whole other side of all their online resources that other companies had developed, that I want to make sure that we're not missing out.
It's so rigorous, like the.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what's so,
Like, oh, these are like what we used to.
yeah,
Like, wow.
no, it's tremendous. The one thing that's different, and one thing that I've kind of been a stickler about, I would call myself annoying at this point, is every time you ask a company for professional development, they always promise that they'll give you professional development. And I've been a teacher when I sat through professional development, that was actually a sales pitch. And then I've been an administrator where I thought I was getting professional development for my staff, and it was another sales pitch. And when you're already asking your staff to give up that Friday to work and be as intentional as possible, it's really frustrating to do a sales pitch, and it's the last thing that I want for anybody. The sales pitch should already be, to me at that point, and to administrators fronthand, after we paid them, we don't need to hear any more about the sales pitch. It's time to get to work and get that. And what I have been working with Kindle Hunt, is really looking at scoping out how many days in-person training we're getting with them versus if we do that online system, how many we're getting from, because essentially what it does is illustrative math are still the trainers, but Kindle Hunt becomes like a contractor in sense. So we set everything up with Kindle Hunt, illustrative math comes here. And again, I'm focusing on making sure that we're having in-person training. So like right now, for instance, I'm looking at 2 full days to start next school year. I'm looking at an additional day in the fall. I'm looking at an additional day in the winter. And then within that, they have components that allow us essentially to work with our instructional coaches to be able to do basically PLs, so professional learning opportunities, on a weekly basis if we wanted to, and learn how to coach that. And so I'm really pushing on that. Right now, they're not wanting to be super transparent on what exactly that looks like, but I want to make that pretty black and white. If we're going to spend the money, I want it to be useful. One thing I've heard every person tell me, and I've talked to them about this math curriculum, has been that it is you will have the greatest outcome. It'll be far more than every other program, but the learning curve on it is difficult. It takes more training. There's going to be more frustration levels that we as leaders have to coach our people on and coach our teachers on to get through. But the end result is going to be much greater. So I'm just trying to ensure that. And again, with that, obstacle in place, another thing that CDE has recommended, I actually reached out to a couple of CEOs, they have also recommended was hiring on like a math specialist. So for instance, I think Kay, I can't remember her last name, she met with us with TNTP. She's a math specialist where she kind of does a contract work where she works with people just on illustrative math. And essentially you lay out what you're looking at a scale for professional development. She helps organize that to make sure, that my game plan would be appropriate for what that curriculum needs or usually needs for the pilot. And then, go from there. And so for right now, like I said, we're looking at the online, we're looking at the printables. One thing that I really like that is as we're starting to narrow this on and we get through these testing windows is shifting to that April to April or March to March mindset, which is where we can start getting our online materials into the hands of teachers so they can start experimenting it before we go into summer, because we don't want August to be our day one. We want the end of this semester to be our day one so that we can dip our toes, we can have the failed lessons, we can go, did you even understand what was going on? And iron out a ton of that stuff so that we can collect that data and then give our questions and frustrations to make that professional development as intentional as it can be. Yeah, other than that, it's kind of where I'm at with that math curriculum. And like I said, with being the fast turnaround, I'm not quite as nervous with that. I just want to make sure that if we're able to bundle it and make sure that all of our professional development needs are met, before we do any, pricing or anything like that.
I had something else I was going to ask you about. Lost it now.
Sorry.
Online stuff, would it have like basic things where parents get help or learn how to?
So essentially right now, everyone, like, you can sign up right now just to have an account with IM. Doesn't matter who wants to do it. Illustrative Math, anyone can sign up and have that. So parents can have those same accounts. Essentially, if we went to another publisher that had that, those would be beefed up. So any of the, like, for example, videos was one thing that came to my mind. At no part with Kindle Hunt or Illustrative Math is there like a video lesson or a video addition to it. And the reason why is because they use a separate publisher that uses all those online resources, those interactive games, those interactive lessons, all that comes from another third-party publisher. And so that was kind of the pieces that I was missing. Going, man, I'd love to be able to send a kiddo home with this on a weekend and their parents know exactly where we're working or exactly what we're working on. And they can access it from whatever they want at home, whether it be the printables that we sent home that week, or the online resources for extra support, whether it be an EL support, all those things will be embedded in that. And that's my goal, so that we can send it home and get all the help from home too, and bring our community into what we're doing on a daily basis.
I remember it came back, which is, we talked to, Sam, and y'all all met Sam. Of course, as CDE doesn't endorse any one particular product, but he sure gave a thumbs up. Even to the last two that we had, he gave a thumbs up. TNTP gave a thumbs up to, and you're moving in the right direction. So we've asked a lot of outside sources. Jared, you talked to a number of school districts that were looking at this as well, and got feedback from a lot of other districts as well. So we've done our homework as far as asking other people that have used this product what they thought as well.
Yeah. Percentage rate is for success.
I'd like to say,
Some of them have it,
so,
some of them
yeah,
don't.
yeah, exactly. Some of it's published, some of it isn't. Some of it's, somewhat correlating, but not specific. The only data I can tell you is I haven't come across a single person that told me this was the wrong decision.
Even agree with SCAP uses it in her school district and highly endorsed it.
CDE, especially with us, with the primary, looking at everything on the clock, things like that. One thing that I also wanted to make sure is we're looking at these curriculums and we're vetting them and making sure that they're research-based. CDE publishes all their recommendations for ELA, for math, for science, and they have all these programs that have all been vetted by the state. So it kind of gives you a starting point in what has already been vetted by the state. What they're saying is their approved list of curriculums. So that you kind of gives you a narrow scope in what you need to look at or what.
So this is obviously on.
And this is on there, and I wanted to make sure that it was on there.
So this question is clearly gonna demonstrate that I don't have kids in the district. Is there, for 7 through 12, is there a math curriculum we use?
Yes, I believe so. I'm not sure the name off the top of my head. Jim, do you remember what it's called? It's the math curriculum.
Saxon was 7 through 12 math.
Math works. Math and
They-
you can have a math.
Eureka?
Math and-
Math and you? Okay. I was thinking, I knew there was 1, 7, 8. One thing that sorry, maybe you might be leading where I'm going.
Well, my point for asking that question is whatever we choose, I think it would be important that it integrates well with what we're using on a food chain.
So essentially, it's a K-12 program. So I kind of thought about that as well, that is this something that as we start to, we start to find success with our primary and intermediate and that we want to adopt for our junior, senior high, they do offer a K-12 program. And it does look like they're starting to dabble into a little bit more of offering kind of some of those within the high school level, but offer some of those higher ed, kind of like college courses within that as well. That was the hope, the tidal wave to come of success.
Yeah.
And trickle it all the way up was the hope, and they have the resources to do it. It was just gonna be, what can we look at, what can we control, and what can we collect data to show that we're making the growth that we need.
Just because we heard this evening how important consistency across the board.
You are not wrong, yes.
Support.
All right,
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
moving on, item 7.
Unfinished business, Madam Chairperson, we're approving for the last time, some revised policies. And again, a lot of these deal with Title IX issues, and for the revision from the 2024 Title IX back to the 2020 original Title IX. So that's almost all of these, except there is also one policy on AI.
There's two,
Two policies.
the last two, GBEE and JS.
There you go. So my recommendation to the board is that we approve the revised policies as listed under the subject matter.
Make a motion to revise policies.
Second,
We have a motion and a couple of seconds to approve the aforementioned policies. Second reading. Questions, comments, concerns? That one, that's one. And it's kind of along this line, kind of. JICA refers to our student dress code. It's a very interesting read. Because Who enforces our dress code?
Our principals. Enforcing our dress code.
Okay, I understand that nobody wants to be the dress code enforcement person, because that's not a fun job.
Right.
And I tried to talk to Gail Levy, it's coming back, and she said no. Because she is the dress code police, but I just think that now that we're discussing it and we're approving it again with some revisions, I would really like to revisit that at some point, because I see, sources of strength videos being posted on Instagram from our junior senior high, which are wonderful.
Yeah.
But they're wearing, midriff tops with just sweaters that, when I went to school, you know, you zip it, but now they're just wide open, and we have pants that are shredded to high heaven, and, you know, just lots of short skirts and shorts, and we should probably revisit that at some point.
I like that idea. I think that we could, and if you want me to bring this up with my administrators, I can do that, and then we can come back with a possible revision to JICA. I hear you.
Even like at the, you know, they have the turn of work ceremonies, nobody asks me anything, or no one gives a very bad. It's gotten wildly out of hand, I feel.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, we can revisit that for sure. Thank you for that.
Any other questions about any of the aforementioned policies, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mrs. A Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
All right,
New business.
item 8, new business.
We're getting there. Item 8A is share results of board self-analysis. I don't think that we're quite ready to share the results of the board self-analysis. Jill,
There's one board member that did not, complete their evaluation, so it's up to, it is not.
Well, I was like, you know what?
so
Thank you. That was real panic.
But this, her policy does have to be completed by April 1. Her policy BAA.
why don't we, would y'all like to say something about board self-analysis and what you thought about it?
If it's not complete, do we still fulfill our obligation?
I think 4 out of 5 is probably pretty good as far as completing. I think that we could call that pretty close to complete.
I mean, we could definitely go through it. And if something more is needed, somebody will tell us.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'd have to approve, why don't we make a few comments and then we need a motion to approve the board self-evaluation.
It's not an action item, it's just discussion.
Does anybody want to go first on sharing results of the board self-eval?
So when that came into his presentation, or his sharing, he said on. So with most of the items that I went through, it was in health. Because great time is off. So, you know, in those 3 months, done a whole lot of working development. Most of mine were development.
I think that's fair.
Those were mostly all mine as well. And a lot of those I couldn't really speak to because I don't know.
I think for mine, it was either developing or effective. I've been at this for quite a lot longer than everybody else. I will say that I like the tool a lot better than what we previously used for board self-evals. Our previous report was like, I show up on time, ready and prepared for meetings, like, what does that accomplish? I didn't know. So I thought that the question was really more thoughts from me on, you know, really are we following our mission statements, and are we making effective decisions based upon the third criteria? So I certainly like to know more.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Stacy?
I definitely liked it. I liked how it goes through everything like vision,
leadership and accountability and then board governance policies and communications and community reflections, finances and resources, like, I mean, it goes through everything, then ethics and leadership. I really like it. I went through it. I did a lot of it, and it also asked at the top my reflections. You know, it's developing. Mine was a lot of developing. There's only a few effective, I would say. We do have to have a lot of training, I believe, to get to the point where we need to be. Just a lot of stuff in there that I was like, wow. That's pretty good. You know, like, that would be good to implement that, or, oh, that's nice. So we do that. Just have to think about it. You know what I mean? Like, it was just some really good things, you know? So I really like the tool. I really do. And then I like that next year we can look back on it and see where we're going back. So I like that.
Awesome. Thank you.
One of the things, I don't have anything to compare it to, so, I did find some of the questions difficult to answer, along the lines of, communicating to, the public. Because I don't know how we communicate to the public. And I don't know how we do that really. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think I marked ineffective, but it's developing. I mean, it's a district-wide problem. Yeah. So we got a lot of good stuff going on, but nobody knows about it.
Right. And I think Dan's gonna help us a lot with that. And I think that'll be part of his process. I look forward to our trainings with Dan. Sure. A good point. Thank you. Ms. Jill, do you think we fulfilled our obligation?
I would agree. Policy states the evaluation of board operational procedures shall be completed by April 1 of each year. So it doesn't give a quota on
Number two.
how many you have to.
So we did our job.
If not, please let us know. All right, moving on, item B.
So item B is approved revised administrative pay scale salaries, specifically mainly focusing on business managers pay scale, and that was provided in there. I just think that the business manager is an extremely important position. I think it needs to be one of the top paid positions in our district. I think that you've seen over the past, well, you've seen this year, I can't speak for past years, but you've seen this year all that we've had to go through to catch up from, and not Heather. Heather's done a fantastic job, but from the years prior of business managers that weren't doing a good job. And so if we're going to attract the person that we need to come in here with experience to help us out, I think that's why I wanted to focus on raising this this pay scale for this particular position. I mentioned that I've talked to some business managers in surrounding districts that wouldn't come here because even though they're much smaller than us, they make more than what we are currently paying. That was this, and I'm kind of going over my this is all in my superintendent report as well. And again, not to Heather's fault, but we spent over $45,000 this year with two different firms to help catch us up for many years of not good accounting principles and practices. And we feel like we're in much better shape now than we were in the past. But I think that it just goes to show you we've spent a lot of money this year just to try to help us catch up in our accounting practices. I just think it's very important. I talked to Sarah today, and I'm sure she would share this with you, that she did a little looking around, and that a lot of the districts around us do pay more than what we do for this position. And again, we are the large district in this area. So with that, I'll take any questions that y'all might have about this particular subject.
So you sort of, just so I'm clear, even what we're approving for the business manager, we're still at the low end for the surrounding area.
I think that this pay scale will get us caught up and maybe just a tad ahead. Now, I will tell you what, I think that this will help with is if we're able to attract the person we want, we won't have to expend $45,000 a year, you know, to get proper help to get caught up. So I think that this will help offset some of that payment substantially.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You should probably do a motion. Okay. That's a great idea. Let's,
Say that again.
she said you should probably do a motion, and I said, that's a good idea. Thanks, Jill.
You bet.
I need a motion, someone. I need a motion. Fine.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the administrative support staff salary schedule. Questions, comments, concerns? Now,
Yes.
am I reading this correctly? The business manager will then do maintenance?
No, no, we are swapping two pay scales. So, we are swapping the pay scale on the far right and the pay scale on the far left. And again, I think that the business manager needs to be the second or third highest paid person in our district. And then we are going to, and you're going to hear more on the one on the right at the next meeting. I want to go into more depth there, but we're going to be looking at combining some positions and revising the pay scale on the ones on the right. I don't really want to talk about that one tonight, if I could prevent it, but we're literally almost swapping two different pay scales.
So what we're discussing tonight is only the business.
That's correct. I prefer us focusing on the business manager on this. But I do want y'all to know what the plans are going forward, and that's why you got the sheet tonight, even though we're focusing on the business manager position. And again, I want to say something that I told Sarah earlier today. I think this would have come next month had it not been, I think we have to get this done so we can properly post Heather's position. Because we posted job pay scale with the position. And so that's why we're a little bit rushed. And for that, I want to apologize that this is a little bit rushed. But I think it's important that we approve the business manager piece so we can get the job posted with the pay scale.
Can you explain that?
Thank you so much. Yes. So now you're going to get my lecture about steps. Pay scales and steps I think are used a lot of times to say, this is where we're starting you at. That's now, if you hired somebody that had 5 years experience, they would start on step 5. And so that's why you see 25 different steps on here. Rarely do you hire somebody that's down there on the steps, you know, teens and 20s. Most of the time you're getting these people and they're up in the single digits of experiences. And so it's where you start. And then that would be the starting salary of the person with that much experience. Now, after you have that starting spot, like for instance, this year, and we have pay scales for everybody, including teachers. And what all those numbers represent is exactly a 2% raise. What we would like to do is get more than a 2% raise. So there's people in our district that would start, or maybe we're on step 2 or 3, and now they're going to get hopefully a 4% raise or a 5% raise or a 3% raise. So a pay scale is the starting point of when you're hired, how much money you're going to make. And then raises from then on out will be determined by this board. And you will determine that when you adopt a budget in June, last week of June. You will be determining how much raise people are getting at the last week of June. That is an excellent question. And I thank you for asking that. What we clarify in the law.
So did I understand you that a step is a year?
That's correct. Steps are typically looked at as years.
Okay.
The years in that particular occupation of some form. Like we may get a applicant that's not worked in the school business. It might be a CPA accountant or something. And then you would have to try to calculate how many years have they worked in this industry to try to figure out where you would place them on the base scale.
So then just to follow up on the increase, so let's say somebody comes in at step 5
Perfect step.
and we give them a 2% raise. Does that move them to step 7?
No,
No,
they would always,
the raise has nothing to do with the steps.
that's correct.
Okay,
The raise will have, the raise will be determined by the board to try to help recruit and retain our teachers. So the pay scale can stay the same. When would you change your pay scale? Teacher pay scale is probably the most important one, because when a person's looking at whether they're gonna come to work in our district, they want to see how much am I gonna make? And so that's why the pay scale is different. You don't have to change the pay scale every year. I would say probably every 3 or 4 years, if you've made enough advancement, changing pay scale, keep up with the rest of the state. But besides that, raises will be given yearly, and they'll be decided by this board.
So with this, if we hire somebody, no experience.
That is correct.
Which will now be 74.8 instead of 63.6.
That's correct.
And I appreciate the thought that went into this, and I really don't really want to talk about the secondary piece, so I would try too hard, but. When we brought in Jared, you said the exact same thing.
But
It should be the second highest paid position in the district. And let me just come from my space of concern. Reese, you're paid higher than you've ever paid. You are now in a position that we've never had, that we've paid higher than we've ever paid, and now we're looking at a potential third person. So where we're going to essentially try to recoup some of that, this changes coming down the line, is what I'm.
That is correct.
So you're asking us to go ahead and approve this essentially. What about the job duties? You're gonna give a person with no experience $11,000 more. But what are those job responsibilities look like?
The job responsibilities remain the same. I mean, this is this job has a tremendous amount of responsibility. This job actually also supervises 2 different employees as well. So there's a lot, and I hope that changing this pay scale prevents us from getting somebody with 0 experience.
Did that position always supervise over other people?
Yeah. She supervises.
Sorry.
Did the position always supervise 2 other positions?
Yes. One time it was only one.
Well, theoretically, Dawn is your employee as well. Dawn is Shay.
Shay is mine, yeah.
But Dawn is, in our org chart is under business manager. And Dawn's with HR, and I think it belongs there because HR.
In the past, it was only one. They had the bookkeeper and not the payroll.
So when did that change?
When I started in this chair, the business manager supervised the HR and the bookkeeper, but I don't know exactly what year that was changed to just the bookkeeper.
On the org chart,
I came
it was
in
that way when I
2020.
got here. So I just am reading you what the org chart says. And yeah,
Last year, then it would have changed.
Is there a
Flow
reason
chart
why?
was last year.
Big jump?
trying to be competitive. We could theoretically entertain less than the big jump if y'all wanted to do that.
My opinion is we're wanting to hire someone with.
Absolutely.
That's important.
Absolutely.
So if we're looking, we're not really looking at step 1. We're looking more in like, yeah, I would think step 9 or 10, kind of. That's a $13,000 difference.
Yeah, I hope we get somebody. Step 5. something to that extent.
And you just asked around, we didn't do a market analyst or anything like that to see if, like, the other districts exactly how much they were.
I just asked around.
So we can't really compare with like Lamar or like Trinidad because their economies are different from ours. So we can't really base off of that. So that's what we gotta look at is like districts that are completely like our.
And it's so hard. You try to do the best we can because our district is unique. We're in this part of the state, but yet we're bigger than everybody else. But again, there's school districts that are much smaller than us that are paying more for this position than we are. There's one particular person I talked to would be in line with this pay scale. And her district is 300 students. I mean, that's
What we were
That's what-
located at, that's.
let's just say close. Let's just say in my area.
But managing the public education system for 300 students is drastically different than managing a district of our size. So while we may be comparable in salaries, I mean, how much bookkeeping work is she really doing for 300 students
She's doing all the same work, right? You have all the same accounts, and
on a much less
just,
grandiose scale?
right, so like so that's a quarter of our size. We have 275 employees that get payroll every month, things like that. This other person probably has 80 that they do run payroll for, 90. So, a quarter of what we do. But do they have all the same accounts? Sure, they have all the exact same numbers and all the exact same accounts that they deal with. So yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult job. It's a very difficult job. Heather works. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I know she's up here many Fridays and many Saturdays because she cannot get her job done Monday through Thursday. I would say Heather puts more time in our office than anybody else in our office. And that's just the truth. And that's a compliment to you. And I appreciate what you do.
I appreciate it too, and I know that she can do the job. That's the thing. She's, our books have come out okay with audits so far, but the thing is we don't know if we're gonna hire somebody that they say they have all this experience and then we get.
You never know. All you can do is do your best, but what I do know is that if we increase this pay scale, we'll have a better chance of getting who we want. And if we don't, I don't think we'll be lucky to get an applicant.
I think we need to analyze the market, and I think we also need a job description, exactly what the job description is.
We have a job description, Stacy. We do. And it's extensive. Yeah. Here's the problem. I hear you. But I've got to post a job this week with a pay scale. And if I post this job this week with the current pay scale, I just don't think I'm going to get the applicants I want.
Any more questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mrs. A Ayala,
Nay.
Mrs. S Ayala,
No.
Mrs. Hines,
No.
Mr. Colomans,
Aye.
All right, item C.
Item C is declare a critical shortage. We do this so we can hire retired teachers essentially. And it just it helps us out to be able to hire retired people.
Make a motion to approve declaration of a critical shortage of qualified teachers and specialists. Second. I have a motion and a second to declare a critical shortage. Any questions or comments? Is this
something that we need to do every year to
Yep.
redeclare?
We'll be doing it this time again next year.
Does this, what if it's a retired, I know you had talked about recruiting retired teachers from surrounding states. Does this help us in that process at all?
They actually can come and work for us with no problems.
Okay.
Yeah, they come from another state. It's mainly in-state rehires.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mr. Colomets,
Aye.
All right, item D.
We have a list of administrative staff employees that are up for renewal, and my recommendation is that we approve the administrative staff employees that I've recommended on the document.
Make a motion to approve the administrative staff employment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the administrative staff employment renewals. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mr. Colomets,
Aye.
All right. Item 9. Executive session. Does anybody need that can break this? A 5-minute pause for the cause, because we have been in the chair for a very long time. Before we do that, Bill, do we need to, I guess we need to do the break before we go into the executive session, is that correct?
You can go ahead and do a motion in a second to enter and then take a break and then come back in and enter.
Okay, do we want to do it?
It's up to you, however you.
Let's do it beforehand, how about that? Just a few minutes, run, come back. Okay?
I'm departing. You don't.
You get to go home, like your own. I'm going to share it out.
Yeah, that was good. All right. Sure.
Here, Heather, I'm gonna steal your chair.
I'm not needed for this next section.